Hello, I'm the Theorizer. This video is a compilation video of basically parts 7 to like 20 of my giant theory on Mort. Yes, Mort from Madagascar, the lemur. You may have recently seen the previous compilation, which is just parts 1 to 6. It was that 2-hour-long video that went around a while ago. And this video is a whole series of different Dreamworks theories on different Dreamworks movies that I've made from across the years of my channel that ultimately, at the very end of this video, all connect together in with the Mort theory. You can skip around this video if you so desire, but this is all of the parts kind of spliced and compiled and rearranged a bit together, so keep that in mind. I do have timestamps, of course, and everything comes together at the end. But if you really want to see where it comes together, that of course is in the next compilation, which I am releasing shortly after this one. And that is where it gets truly, truly good and really focuses more on Mort again. In the meantime, enjoy.
The Shrek series is my favorite Dreamworks franchise, and if you've seen some of my best and most plausible theories, you'll be eager to see this. I have a small little Shrek theory I made months ago, which stated that the fairy godmother is behind more than we're led to believe in the film. So I've constructed a timeline of events to contain a massive conspiracy that predates Shrek 1 and extends past the final film, Shrek 4. First, I'll need to dig out some of the buried evidence and construct evidence with evidence to use as evidence in my timeline. Evidenceception. There will be spoilers through Shreks 1 through 4, so hopefully you've seen them all. If not, watching only the first two films will allow you to understand this as well. As you may remember, the secret plot of Shrek 2 is basically a conspiracy all in itself. It's obvious in Shrek 2 that the fairy godmother is all about her son marrying Fiona. It's also obvious that there's a master plan going on. So, I've sifted through the evidence to put this master plan into a timeline. If you're perceptive or even just attentive, you'll easily realize what part of the plan is. At the end of the film, King Harold is hit with magic and turns into a frog. At first, you're confused at what this means, but then you realize that it's his true form, and that part of the master plan was that the fairy godmother had years ago turned Harold from a frog into a human. And when you realize this, it blows your mind. He wanted to become a human so that he could marry a princess. Sound familiar? Although, as the movie establishes, the godmother took this opportunity to strike up a deal. As the movie hints towards, if she turned him into a human, her son would marry his future daughter. And that's why Charming is so obsessed with Fiona. But when you think about it, she only wanted her son to marry into royalty so she could become all-powerful over far, far away. Okay, so that's been established. Although, there is more evidence that is very secret and hidden that I have found that states there is more to the plan. Do you remember what Fiona's curse was? She says when she was a little girl, a witch cast a spell on her. This spell transformed her into an ogre every night until she kissed her true love, at which point she would take true love's form. But what always got to me was why this witch cast a spell on Fiona. What exactly did Fiona do to deserve this? And finally, something clicked. If the fairy godmother wanted her son to marry Fiona, it would appear as forcing and rushed. So, to avoid suspicion from the public and the Queen, she created the elaborate plan of locking Fiona away in a tower and, yes, casting this spell on Fiona. She was the witch. As I just said, this elaborate plan is done to avoid public suspicion and the suspicion from the Queen, who has no idea of the true plans. So if it's true that the fairy godmother cast a spell on Harold's firstborn and locked her away in a tower, then it fits perfectly into place. It was her son who was expected to save Fiona. Why is this curse locked with true love's kiss? Charming is supposed to kiss her. And he was also expected to slip easily into the dragon's keep, unlike all the other knights who died trying. Honestly, what makes him so different from them? Well, he's the son of the puppet master. Okay, we've discovered what the fairy godmother does in this movie. Although, when investigating this crazy plan, I discovered more than ever. You might not believe this, but Queen Lillian was the one who introduced Shrek to Fiona. It's crazy, but plausible. Let me explain. Queen Lillian did not know the master plan, correct? Good. Now, do you remember in Shrek 1, the magic mirror? Yes, well, he was the one who introduced Fiona to Lord Farquaad. He had the dating game he played with Lord Farquaad, and the candidates for Lord Farquaad to date were Snow White, Cinderella, and Fiona. Surprise, surprise, Farquaad chooses Fiona. We don't know where this mirror came from. Farquaad's knights just say that they found it. But if you remember the classic tale of Snow White, then you'll remember that the magic mirror came from the evil queen. And guess what? We see that the evil queen and Snow White both live in the kingdom of Far, Far Away. You may be asking, what am I going to do with this evidence? Why, I'm going to construct a second conspiracy. Fiona was a private princess only for Charming, so why is this mirror allowed to advertise her? If this mirror came from Far, Far Away, then get this. Queen Lillian stuck her daughter's advertisement in the mirror and sent it to Doodalok, a kingdom full of knights who could save her daughter. After all, she had no idea of the true master plan and just wanted her daughter to be saved. It's an interesting thought, but let's see how the timeline supports it. So that's all the evidence for a timeline. Now here it is visualized. A frog asked a fairy godmother if he could become a prince and marry the love of his life, and in return, his firstborn child would be sent into a believable and elaborate plan to allow this godmother control of his future kingdom. The plan was set into action. The godmother cast a spell on his firstborn, making her an ogre every night. She also seemingly spawned a prince and called him son. Fiona finally is locked away in the tower to await the spawn of Mrs. Psycho. The Queen of Far Far Hollywood is unbeknownst to the plan and desperate for her daughter gets involved in multiple mini-schemes, one of which involves putting her daughter's advertisement into a magical mirror and shipping it off to a kingdom full of knights to save her. This puts a massive kink in the heinous plan, and Shrek ends up being dragged in. He saves her, marries her, and when Charming arrives to save her, he has nothing to save but, and I quote, a gender-confused wolf. Devastated that the queen metaphorically and unwittingly put a compound fracture in his so-called mother's plan, he alters his plan, but the all-too-bubbly psychopath dies in a stupid fashion, leaving him alone to reveal his true plans and dominate the kingdom with full-on delusion inherited from you-know-who. He ends up dying. The end. And that seems to wrap up Dreamworks' biggest conspiracy. But seriously, pretty good conspiracy timeline. It basically explains the true rise and fall of the not-so-charmings.
Shrek. They are the best Dreamworks films in my opinion. They have it all. The animation, the epic story, the music, the characters, and they do have a few chunks of hidden secrets which I've made a few videos in the past digging apart. I'd recommend you watch my video on Fiona and Shrek and the Godmother before you watch this one, because a large chunk of evidence I'll be using in this video roots from that other one. So the fairy godmother, also known as Dama Fortuna, is a driven, intelligent, psychotic businesswoman and A-list celebrity who basically rules the social setting of Far, Far Away. Her past is shrouded in mystery, and sure as hell is not anything like the Cinderella fairy godmother's past, so who is she? What other plans has she enacted? How do they all tie together? I have the answers. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and this is not just any ordinary fairy godmother. She's a scientist, a genius one, whose magic stems from her knowledge of chemistry and alchemy, as proven by her factory. I don't even really think she's a biological fairy, just someone who is self-mutated with chemicals. Her wand, of course, isn't the source of her magic, it's just simply a conduit of magic flow from inside of her, as we know because its lights go out when she dies. Anyways, she's first and foremost a businesswoman, but uses her celebrity status to give and get anything she wants to and from anyone she wants. And she doesn't care if the person she's helping is morally flawed. She'll do anything because she herself is morally flawed. As we can see on the walls in her factory, she has helped many people with their happy endings, including the Wicked Witch of the West, whom she made even more evil. Something is seriously wrong with her if she's going to weird lengths to help even the villains, but that's not all. DreamWorks tried to hide this one, but if you pause the frame right before Shrek walks into her office, you can see a before and after of Cinderella's stepsister. The fairy godmother turned the step-sibling from male to female, as we can see. However, we actually meet the step-sibling, and they seem to still be transgender. So did the fairy godmother use her magic in a way that could blackmail the step-sibling? I'm not too sure, but this frame is hidden in a fraction of a second, and DreamWorks has a love of hiding things like this in half frames. So, she's a blackmailing A-list businesswoman and professional megalomaniacal psychopath, but that's just her personality, not her backstory or motives. If you ended up watching my other Shrek video on Fiona and the Godmother, then you know that I'm 95% certain, that the witch they talk about, who cursed Fiona to become an ogre at night, was in fact the fairy godmother herself, so that she could swoop in and save the day. I believe this heavily to be the case, and so do many others. And while this whole thing with Fiona may have been her biggest plan as it involved the future of her son, what may have been her other plans, and how do they tie into all of this? Many people in Far, Far Away seem to be generally miserable. More accurately, the villains. They all hang out in the Poison Apple Tavern, and so did Harold the Frog before he got his happy ending. And it's my great belief that the fairy godmother has done something utterly wicked. She has intentionally gone around and used her magic to interfere with the lives of several people so that she can swoop in and save their days. Not just Fiona. But the fact that she very likely did do this to Fiona leads me to believe that she's done this to everyone she's saved. It makes sense too. She's not using magic to fix them, she's just undoing the magic she already used to make them miserable. Her potions are intentionally appealing sounding, but some of them are downright evil, and are likely used for such. The other reason I believe she's making everyone miserable is because her slogan is happiness, just a teardrop away, and she has made herself summonable by someone crying. She induces this. She makes their lives suck. It's her thing. But her intelligence and strategic nature leads me to believe that she's not doing this for fame or some other petty goal. I believe fame is just a stepping stone to what she really wants, but I don't know what that is yet. In Shrek 3, Prince Charming immediately went to the Poison Apple to recruit villains once he was out of options and his mother died. Everyone in there hated him at first for some reason, but then they all warmed up to him when he promised them their happy endings back. And they hopped all over it because their happiness has been stripped from them. Charming knew the backup was to appeal to the people she ruined. Charming himself, I think, might even be a byproduct of Dama Fortuna's even greater plan, which involves herself and herself alone. Charming was a child she created, or perhaps birthed, simply to get herself on top of Far, Far Away. But she was already on top in regards to the social setting. Her plan with Charming involved getting on the top of its political and royal setting. Charming isn't real, he's a fake boy created by the Godmother. This is additionally seen in how he was utterly lost without her guidance, and reverted to the failsafe of undoing the misery and the villains she created. I think more specifically that these villains were created by the Godmother not only to give her something to fix, but to contrast Cinderella and the other princesses she fixed. If she creates villains, the happiness of the heroes is almost certainly assured. She did this to make the happiness of others more potent, as no hero can exist without a villain. But getting on top of the royal chain in Far, Far Away is what she wants, though I'm still trying to figure out why. She's power-starved, but I think she aims to do something with it all. Her plot started way back when she ruined the life of a small frog, making him yearn for the life of being a human. In doing so, she introduced him to Lillian, a woman whose life she most likely also ruined. As we know, Lillian's family used to be the royalty governing Far, Far Away, and this was the Godmother's first step into worming her way into the system. Once their marriage was assured, she poisoned the daughter of Harold and Lillian, making her an ogre by night. Godmother created a son who she named Charming, and she had Harold indoctrinate his daughter into being entranced by the concept of a charming prince who'd save her. Funny how she literally named him Charming. It's all a part of the scheme to mesmerize Fiona, which worked, as we see, in her obsessive diary. But why wait so long to save Fiona? Why send Charming at a very specific time after Shrek just saved her? Kind of extremely coincidental, right? Why would Charming show up right after and not way before? It's statistically improbable for these events to happen so close together. So, then, there's only one logical answer to this, and it's the fact that the fairy godmother intentionally sent him right after Shrek saved Fiona and they began their honeymoon. Clearly, Prince Charming was unaware of this plan the godmother had in mind, and she blatantly lied to him about it constantly, even in the carriage. She kind of takes over and starts screaming the same thing he screamed. This is only further proof that her son is the means to an end. But why would she wait for Shrek to save Fiona? I think I know. She needed Shrek to be there so that she could save Fiona again, to fool Harold and Lillian. She needed to swoop in and break apart their love. Shrek, or really any other rescuer for that matter, needed to save Fiona. Ever notice how the Happily Ever After potion is the only potion that is intentionally labeled with an incredibly appealing title and sticker behind a very important looking glass display? Notice how she smiles when the pigeon informs her that Shrek did indeed steal it? She acts like she was surprised at the theft when around Charming, but her smirk implies that she's pleased her plan is following through. So yes, I believe the fairy godmother sent Charming in right after Shrek began his honeymoon, simply to test Harold's allegiance to her and their plan. She needed to make a big introduction to Fiona, and the only way to do that would be to break her and make her require further happiness, or in other words, allow an ogre into Fiona's life and shock Harold with it. Harold's spastic dinner fight with Shrek is all because, of course, he was furious that the godmother's plan didn't follow through. He was mad because he didn't want his own happy ending revoked by her. This was all the fairy godmother toying with him, like she does to everybody. She needed this dinner table argument to happen so that Fiona would feel torn and distraught, so that the entrance the godmother made could have as much potency as possible. She was just waiting for Fiona outside. This is proof of it. She only appears if you cry into one of her business cards, not if you cry into nothingness. This means that she'd have been monitoring, waiting, which, yes, by extension, means that she wanted Shrek to save Fiona first. What a psychotic thing she is. She staged the entire film's plot. She has wormed her way into royalty, and in her attempt to be good enough for Fiona, she has become a celebrity by manipulating several other princesses. This was all for Fiona because she needed Charming to become king, because she needed to become the ruler of Far, Far Away. But why? Personally, I think she wants to lead all of the land with evil power. She wants everything. Citizens to bow before her. Similar to what Rumpelstiltskin wanted in Shrek 4, but why this? Well, most villains with determination as great as hers, with an endgame as arbitrary as this, had at one point felt inferior in their life, whether they were bullied, tormented, whatever. So I feel that's what's happened to Dama Fortuna. She made herself a fairy, gave herself magic, all to compensate for something that tormented her in her past. Quite honestly, I believe it was the previous royals, Lillian's family. I feel like something happened with them, because it seems to be the most sensible in this situation, with how she wants to dominate the kingdom that wronged her. This is besides the fact that Lillian blatantly tells Harold that she does not trust the fairy godmother. Something happened in Lillian's family history that ruined the fairy godmother's mentality, and this is her revenge. She used to be a witch, but now she's a witch posing as a fairy. This is her sick, complex, psychotic, twisted revenge, and I'm not sure what kind of things the royals did to her. Most likely, though, they shunned her because of her magical ways out of fear. I might go into this more later, but for now, I'm the Theorizer. Dama Fortuna, aka the fairy godmother from Shrek, is wickedly villainous. I made a bunch of backed and theorized claims about her in the first part to this now two-part series, such as how she actually wanted Shrek to save Fiona for her own grand scheme reasons. I also concluded that she is responsible for all of the villains in Far, Far Away being evil, and she did it because she wants her son to marry Fiona, so that she can be on top of Far, Far Away's political setting. I figured that this was all because she wanted revenge on the kingdom, perhaps because she had anger regarding the previous royals, Queen Lillian's family, and because she wants to take everything over because of her newfound inferiority complex. It's utterly imperative that you watch part 1 before this, or if you've already seen it, rewatch it immediately, because that video will flow right on into this one. And here's the surprise. I have more evidence for all of this that starts making my whole theory even more more likely and infinitely more shockingly creepy. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and as you know, in part 1 I claimed that Dama Fortuna has ruined the lives of many villains, making them evil. More proof of her possibly ruining the lives of the villains is seen in Rumpelstiltskin. It just so happened that Shrek saved Fiona immediately as Harold and Lillian were about to sign a paper that would throw away their kingdom. The fairy godmother's time with all of this is utterly impeccable, and Rumpelstiltskin's rage only grew from that point forward. She's creating villains. Another thing I talked about in part 1 is the godmother's neglection of her son, Charming. She doesn't truly care about him, and he is the means to her end, to her domination of the kingdom. I go on to explain the instances in which she doesn't tell Charming much about her plans, and this right here is more evidence of that. Charming had no idea that Shrek would show up and take Fiona, and in part 1 I made it very clear that the godmother wanted all of this to happen, and she in fact was the witch who casted the curse on Fiona to begin with. The final thing I discussed was in my major 2016 Shrek Timeline video, and it was that the magic mirror, which advertised Fiona as a candidate for rescue, was a strange thing in the movie. Fiona was supposed to be on lockdown by the godmother, and she was only supposed to be rescued by Charming, so who let the mirror in on this information about Fiona? In my 2016 timeline video, I said it could have been Queen Lillian, who suspected the godmother of evil but knew nothing of the true plans, and thus let the advertisement reach Farquaad. But now, I think it was the fairy godmother who sent it. I believe it to a very high extent. Lillian never could have slipped the mirror past the godmother's plans unless the godmother wanted it to, or she did it herself. So she wanted Shrek to save Fiona. Perhaps the godmother was even behind Farquaad wanting to exterminate fairy tale characters. Perhaps she's been granting him his wishes and forced all of the fairy tale characters into Shrek's swamp so he'd be forced to meet Fiona. After all, Dama Fortuna was supposed to be in the first movie, but it was mysteriously scrapped. So, I looked for more, and when watching the first Shrek movie over again, I realized something very specific and odd about Fiona's curse. Something in its wording. Her curse turned her into an ogre by night and kept her human during the day, until her first kiss of true love, which would turn her presumably back into a human after she kissed one. In the first fairy godmother video I made, and more primarily in my big major Shrek Theory of 2016, I made the very accurate claim that it was in fact the fairy godmother herself who cast the initial curse on Fiona. She was the witch who set it all into motion, as that was how it happened in the original Shrek book. The godmother did this to, jumpstart her master plans, but there's something interestingly unique about the wording to the spell. If she truly wanted Charming to save Fiona and turn her into a human, then why would she even allow this curse to have her stay an ogre to begin with? Why would the godmother make Fiona specifically allowed to become one or the other if she was so desperately wanting Fiona to get with Charming, and Charming alone? Why not just make the curse say, true love's kiss will revert you into a human? Well, she didn't do that because there's a secret agenda behind this, and she wanted Shrek to save Fiona. She somehow knew Shrek specifically would be the one to save Fiona. It's why she sent Charming in immediately after her rescue. I said all of this in part 1, but why make Fiona an ogre? Why make Shrek specifically save her? And how did she know it would all play out so precisely? If Dama Fortuna really is behind even the first movie's plot and everything, why Shrek? Why ogres? I know the answer. The fairy godmother's powers root from old-fashioned and historical witches, sort of like the ones from Shrek 4 kind of representing. The fairy godmother has deep roots in prophecies and alchemy. Yes, that kind of eerie witch. She needed Fiona's savior to be Shrek because it was always Shrek. That's how she knew. She has the ability to predict the future. I know. It's like outlandish sounding, and I intentionally shied away from talking about this in part 1, but now I have evidence staring me in the frickin' face. Her name is Dama Fortuna. In the Shrek book, she was a fortune teller. Her name means Lady Luck or Dame of Fortune. That name applies to her making others' fortunes come true, but it also means fortune teller, her occupation in the book. She uses tarot cards to narrate the first quarter of the story, and she essentially stands outside of the story and prophesizes things. If that isn't undeniably stunning proof that she's prophesized all of this and then manipulatively acted upon it, I don't know what is. It makes me think that maybe her magic is quite simply an illusion perceived by everyone, and all of her power is rooted in her ability to prophesize and predict the future. Magic's just a side effect of her paganistically vast knowledge base. So, now that we've dealt with the idea that she manipulated Shrek, Farquaad, and Far Far Away, we finally once again have to return to her basis for all of this. We know she's doing this to become the leader of Far Far Away's royalty, and we know that it likely had something to do with her abilities being feared and shunned by Lillian's family, but that's not all. What exactly did she do? Well, her cottage turned factory might give us some clues. Possibly it could have very well been her first transitions of people. Using her magic to grant happy endings was likely seen as frightening and demonic back before she made it commonplace, and I bet she was shunned for it. Sort of like Rumpelstiltskin from the fourth movie. Shunned. So she began granting unhappy endings in defiance. Cruel fates in return, creating villains which only would have amplified things back at her, to the point of her removing the highest regals and forcing the position to be open for a new king, who she was going to make sure was Harold the Frog. Lots of famous people are famous for initially frowned upon things which are forgotten over time, leaving only a superstar. Oftentimes, a superstar with a famously bad attitude, as seen in her posters. She turned from forbidden and dangerous into scantily clad and notorious. The notoriety of these stars is often forgotten, or perhaps in her case, erased from the minds of all, leaving only A-list celebrities. And yes, she could have easily erased her darkest past from the minds of the citizens. She has memory potions. How do I know? I know because she can make people fall in love, which logically would require the erasing of various emotions and memories of opposing events. Perhaps it was her transition of the city, or rather her transition of one of the people on her walls of fame, but it was something that got her shunned by the ex-royals. She even advertises her creation of the Wicked Witch of the West in her cottage, which I think might have even been the tipping point for the royals. Either way, it was the same thing that we see her doing in the movie that got her shunned, and that's pushing her for fame and power. And the fairy godmother was finally put an end to by the combined power of her own magic and the central man at the start of her whole plan. How poetic. Until next time, I'm the Theorizer. Shrek. I'm back again for the fairy godmother. If you haven't seen the first two parts to this three-part theory, I'll link them in the top right corner now, because they are crucial to watch before this one, and they're pretty good. So do that, then return here and watch this, because I've made a discovery about Prince Charming's parentage, which came as a shock to me, will come as a shock to you, and blew my damn mind so hard that I started shaking like a tased pufferfish. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and my analysis of Godmother Dama Fortuna has come to a third part, and it's a bit of a mind-blower. Here we go. I'm just going to get this much out right now. I do have reason to believe that Charming does have a father, and was not simply just created by the fairy godmother. It was something I pondered upon before, and it doesn't have much weight bearing on the fact that the godmother still carelessly used him, but I believe he was born. And this all ties together some hellish madness into a small idea that blows everything into new territory. The reason the fairy godmother is evil is because she's trying to rule Far Far Away's royal setting so that she can destroy the kingdom in an act of revenge against the previous royals, Queen Lillian's family. In the last two parts, I claimed that maybe they had shunned and ridiculed Dama Fortuna for her witchcraft and creating unnatural happy endings, but now I think I have an idea that makes her anger feel a little more sensible. I believe Charming was actually born from one of the royals. Yes, I think that Charming is the son of the fairy godmother and one of the members members of Lillian's family, and this was the core reason as to why she was so brutally shunned. The fairy godmother was considered to be an external stain on their family. This kind of thing has happened in many real-life royal families and powerful political powerhouses in which the mistress on the side is afterwards publicly ridiculed and forcefully hated. And while this does neatly tie up my theory on Dame Fortuna's revenge, it then opens up a plethora of other questions that I can luckily answer in a brilliant fashion. Firstly, we do know Charming visually looks like he belongs to this royal family. Golden royal hair, blue eyes, all of it is seen before in the shared traits between Queen Lillian and Arthur, all the same. And they're the only three characters that really share this. This is nowhere near coincidental, and also you must consider the fact that Charming actually is a prince, and he says far, far away, legally is rightfully his. There are no other kingdoms around that he could even be a legal prince of except Duloc, and I highly doubt that Daddy Farquaad is a real thing outside of fan fictions born from a meme lord's sleep paralysis delusion. So then the question it brings up is, who is he the son of? Well, the consensus by the Shrek community is that Lillian had at least one other brother who was the mysterious father of Arthur, and she of course had a father and a mother. Obviously Lillian's mother can't be Charming's father, leaving only Arthur's dad and the old king as candidates. The age difference between Prince Charming and Arthur is both significant and minor at the same time. Assuming Charming is in his mid to late 30s and Arthur is around 20, this could still mean either the old king or his son is Charming's dad. However, I do in fact believe it to be the king, because while Arthur's dad did mysteriously disappear from Arthur's life, making him a suspicious candidate, the king had far more sway and influence and likely more ability to ruin the godmother's life. Also, her age matches what his would be, and Lillian, at the time of Charming's birth, would have been a young adult. Young, beautiful witch and an older, regal man. Kind of an interestingly cliched royal scandal. I believe their relationship was meant to be a secret of sorts, but the godmother likely did it to have a tie to the family regardless. So whoa, I need to slow down here. Here, I'll take what I think happened bit by bit. Dame Fortuna, a young and beautiful good witch, began a secret relationship with Lillian's father, King Unnamed. A child is conceived, either accidentally or by Dame Fortuna's secret intentions, and the relationship begins to leak out. The king and the royals shun and ridicule Dame Fortuna for this. She births Charming, who has the royals' signature wavy blonde hair and blue eyes. Lillian's brother left, and possibly with the fairy godmother had a son, Arthur Pendragon. Oh, that brings a whole new layer onto this. Arthur's mom is also the godmother? I have no proof for it, but it's entirely possible. The likely reason Arthur's father left after dropping him at the school is because he needed to save his kingdom, but he was promptly stopped and destroyed by the fairy godmother, who'd already disposed of the king and queen, and had already begun her plans to spark a relationship between Harold the Frog and Princess Lillian Pendragon. It is so neatly tying all of this together, it's nothing short of brilliantly perfect. And I mean, it's odd to include a random subplot about Arthur's dad in Shrek 3. They had it for the bonding effect between Shrek and Arthur, but they never really dwell on it. I sometimes wonder if Charming is Arthur's father, but that obviously makes absolutely no sense at all. I think the fairy godmother quite simply was desperate for fame in the beginning, but it escalated to full-on royal power after she was shunned and ridiculed. She birthed Charming intentionally to worm her way into the royals permanently, but it backfired in her face, and she's very evil. I think she was the one who removed the headless horseman's head so he couldn't play the flute like his lifelong dream was stated as. I think she was hoping that Harold the Frog would die immediately after she did because of his overused frog age. And for those wondering why she couldn't avoid her death, it was because she had no idea how it would happen. She may be able to read the future, but only in tarot cards. And that's not simply enough. So now what do you think of her? Rude, fame-starved serpent turned supervillainous dictator? Check. She's nuts. Her ties to the royal family were scandalous and sexual. She wormed her way around everyone, likely killed all of Lillian's family discreetly. And Charming is at the core of everything. But his lack of any true knowledge is why, when he was on his own, he flailed around unorganized like a stupid head. Shrek 3, everybody. I hope this was a relatively satisfying semi-conclusion to my trilogy on the fairy godmother. Until next time, I'm the Theorizer. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and today we'll be discussing the alternate timeline repercussions of Shrek 4, and I'll be tying it to my 3 amazing theories on the fairy godmother. I love explaining paradoxical temporalities, so here we go. So Rumpelstiltskin is a key component of Shrek 4, whose alterations of prior instated timelines results in plot holes, which today I shall explain away as hidden lores. In my past 3 videos on the fairy godmother, I delved into everything and ripped a massive conspiracy out of these films that runs deeper than anything superficially expected. However, I made all 3 videos before even uploading the first one, so I was caught off guard when a couple of commenters noticed something interesting. It was something that they saw as counter evidence to my theory, but I pinned their comments because in actuality their evidence proved my theory outright. It was quite simply this. In Shrek 4's alternate timeline, Shrek was never born. Fiona later explains that without Shrek to save her, she simply got tired and escaped the tower on her own. However, guess what? Charming never showed up afterwards anyways to save her. In Shrek 2, Charming showed up right after Shrek, and this odd timing was prime evidence for my fairy godmother theories, but now there's objective proof that the fairy godmother wanted Shrek to save Fiona. Shrek's non-existence caused her plan to collapse, so she never sent in Charming. Ultimate proof. But these commenters saw this as counter-evidence because it messes with the 4th movie's timeline a bit. And as I've said in very old Shrek theories of mine, the 4th movie's timeline contradicts itself, and the counter-evidence doesn't break my theories, it just breaks the 4th movie altogether. So now, after 2 years of thinking over the alternate timeline, I'm finally here to put an end to the plot holes, and guess what? It all miraculously ties in with my 3-part godmother theories. So first of all, the reason she wanted Shrek to go to begin with was a reason she didn't like. Even with her tarot cards, she could have altered the outcome, but she chose to keep Shrek because he was the quickest route she foresaw, because she needed the king and queen to avoid taking Rumpel's deal. The sheer and utter coincidence of them literally beginning to sign his contract and a dude comes crashing in with the news of Fiona's rescue is staggeringly timely. The godmother needed a quick solution so that the king and queen didn't disappear and fracture her plans, so she begrudgingly picked the future she foresaw that involved Shrek. The timing is utterly perfect, and it also explains her extra hatred of Shrek in the movies. He was a necessary problem she now wanted to eliminate. If you can recall, I discussed how the fairy godmother, also known as Dama Fortuna, was most likely an old-fashioned kind of witch, similar to that of which we see in Shrek 4. All of the green, kind of pagan ones. So what if I told you that there's a good chance we are shown the fairy godmother's backstory in Shrek 4? I believe she used to live in this trailer park before her self-upgrade. She was always a lot like Rumpelstiltskin, a fortune teller who'd grant the wishes of people she preyed on. I almost feel like Rumpel was the one who took up the torch of scheming blackmail after the fairy godmother left the trailer park. Them knowing each other would explain a lot, such as how the fairy godmother knew about Rumpel's deal with the king and queen, which she put an end to via Shrek saving Fiona. So what about these massive plot holes and timeline repercussions I keep going on about? Well, to deal with all of that, we first must establish what exactly Lillian and Harold's contract did to them. It vaporized them, and it clearly did something that the godmother was horrified of. The contract makes use of the word disappear, and as Rumpel said, it was a play on words. In order for all of the king and queen's problems to disappear, I believe it simply made them disappear, so their problems would go with them. They faded like Shrek, meaning there might have been a temporal change going on, and simply making them vanish cannot give him legal rights to the kingdom. No, he'd planned this for ages, hence his insane revenge on Shrek. The past probably was changed by this contract they signed, and remember, they're his contract, so he can remember all of the timelines that are created. In fact, I think he was shunned by the previous royals as well. You know, Lillian's family. And God knows how old he really is. He's like a fundamentally mutated witch, sort of like Dama Fortuna. Maybe the fairy godmother got her ideas of making people's lives miserable from him. He's a more intellectual salesman, and we actually see him convince people that their lives suck. he ruins lives too. Do you think it was any coincidence that Shrek's days felt repetitive at the beginning of Shrek 4? I bet Rumple had some hand in all of it. Anyways, why do the timelines mess with the movie? What are these plot holes? Well, I'm sorry if what I'm about to discuss gets confusing because I'm about to explain around the counter-argument brought upon by my commenters. I'm about to explain the reason they think their evidence works against my theory rather than with it, and why that doesn't exactly work. Okay, here we go. Their argument was a question asking why Dama Fortuna didn't send in Charming anyways to save Fiona. The answer is because Shrek never existed due to Rumple, and Dama Fortuna, a tarot reader, noticed this timeline fracture. In the parallel universe, she ceased all areas of her original plan and began to rework it and have Charming save Fiona differently, but then Harold and Lillian vanished due to their contractual disappearing deal with Rumpelstiltskin. As I stated, their crowns may have fallen onto the ground, but it's likely that Rumple was subsequently transported to this parallel universe the minute that happened, though we didn't see it. But guess what? Because the fairy godmother didn't try to stop Rumple, and we've established that there's a chance they knew each other, this means there's also a possibility that Rumpelstiltskin had deals he made with the fairy godmother, and Shrek signing the contract in the fourth movie not only resulted in an alteration upon the histories of Harold and Lillian, but it also messed with the past of Dama Fortuna. This leads me to then question how they know each other, which is what I will get into now. I first of all believe that, to some extent, the Shrek book character known as Dama Fortuna wasn't simply translated into the fairy godmother character, but part of Fortuna was also translated into Rumpelstiltskin, or rather the creepy witch side of Fortuna. Logically, this would tie the godmother and Rumple's backstories together on a fundamental level. I think one of them got their powers from the other. Now, I would say that Rumple wished for a bunch of contracts and magic ink, but based off of the fairy godmother's backstory I established, it only makes sense that she would turn to him in her time of need, wanting revenge on the previous royals that wronged her. So if Rumple made a deal with the fairy godmother, perhaps she failed to sign it because she suddenly learned of Harold the Frog being in need of saving. However, in Rumple's altered timeline, Harold vanished with Lillian, meaning the fairy godmother had nobody to blackmail. So in the past, she signed a deal with Rumple to exact revenge on the royal family in some other way, leaving her completely segregated from Fiona and the original plans in that old timeline. I don't think Harold and Lillian were never born, though, because then Fiona would have ceased to exist in the alternate timeline as well, but she did not. Where did Lillian and Harold go then when they disappeared? I don't know. Probably a subsequent alternate universe, but more on that in 30 seconds. So in the alternate timeline, Rumpelstiltskin gave the fairy godmother a massive increase in powers, leading to her being the juggernaut of magic she is in Shrek 2. Rumple's a sneaky little thing. He seems to remember all timelines he took place in since they are his contracts. What's weird, though, is the fact that the ogre tribe from the parallel universe seemed to engage in a dance sequence with Shrek during the credits of Shrek 4. They also captured Rumple, leading me to believe that it was him who granted all of their memories back. Then the final question is, if all of this happened in the alternate timeline and everything still remained, though without the godmother's interference, why do Harold and Lillian mention her in their carriage? And who cursed Fiona, if not the godmother? I am so sorry, but here's where things utterly spiral into complicatedness. I doubt you'll be able to follow along, so please watch this video several times. These two remaining questions are left, which means there's yet another timeline, the one we see at the beginning of the film, where Lillian and Harold never signed, but the godmother did. Back in the past. We never see this timeline where all three parties sign their contracts that I'm discussing. Let's call the original Shrek timeline number 1, Shrek 4's alternate timeline number 2, and this big other one we never see, where the godmother signed her way back in the past, number 3. Number 1 has no complications, but number 2 starts to get weird because Harold and Lillian sign and disappear. So why didn't the godmother go to save Fiona? Because Shrek's non-existence gave her no opportunities for further manipulation. My theory is that she went back to Rumple, signed a contract, and this put her into the timeline where Harold and Lillian didn't exist even prior to when they would have signed the contract, giving the fairy godmother the powers required to dominate the kingdom, which failed as Rumple used her contract and magic against her, and after killing her in timeline number 2 and 3, took on the kingdom as his own. Oh, I love the multiverse. Especially when there are 3 universes, the third of which only theoretically exists, until the second universe throws a villainous fairy into the third, therefore legitimizing the third and causing 2 and 3 to merge, emerge after a Rumple deal that was supposed to happen years ago in Timeline 3 ends up occurring in the future in Timeline 2. I even think Rumple was the one who suggested to the Godmother to make Fiona an ogre. After all, in Timeline 2 we see that he knows fully well about her curse, more than he should know from reading a damn children's book. Shrek. Give me more, baby! I'll squeeze the lore out of this thing until there's nothing left but basic dimensions. Until next time, I'm the Theory.
Guess what? Chicken butt. Speaking of unauthorized comedic intrusions, I have found something conspiratorial and questionably worthy of a video. A shockingly random, mysterious, uninvestigated thread in the most obscure corner of the most random transitional scene in a kid's animated film sequel almost 2 decades old. In Shrek 2, we get, not 10 minutes into the film, a shocking, appalling, offhand scene that shakes me to my very core. Absolutely despicable. Do you see it? This insolent trumpeter has deviated from instruction to blare his unbridled snark at the most important moment in the Royal Kingdom's known history. He plays the Hawaii Five-0 theme song. I would start going nuts about how it exists at this time in history, but we know full well that the Shrek films have a convergent timeline with TV shows similar to Cops in it, so this is typical. It's the study of Shrek, I've done it thoroughly. No, what gets me is that this is a very important moment which he has chosen to interrupt with cringe for no other reason than to further his personal ego. Shrek's unlikely to have seen Far Far Away's version of Hawaii Five-0 out in his swamp. How dare a class clown buffoon attempt this? The dude who is giving the announcement, he is the Herald, I think you pronounce it as they call it, spelt like this, not like our King Harold. Anyways, he gives us information about this fool who has intruded the most integral moment in Fiona's adult life. He scolds him and says, "Enough, Reggie." And with that, we begin our journey into this untapped, unprecedented gold mine. Why did he choose to interrupt this important moment? What does this imply about him? And is he more than just a petty joker? Don't click off this video. Reggie will find you. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and don't tell me this is an overreaction, because it is. Best I understand it, Reginald here is a reference to a character from a 1937 movie called A Damsel in Distress, but that doesn't really help us, and interestingly enough, that's the only tidbit of trivia on the entirety of the internet regarding Reggie. A blank slate. Perfection. As far as we get to know him in this scene, he is a far, far away inhabitant who plays for the Royal Messenger. Brown hair, brown eyes, medium build, middle age. I went frame by frame to identify the handedness in which he plays his instrument, only to learn that typically this thing is held in a certain way regardless. Clever. Dreamworks even sacrificed symmetry to keep the handedness the same on either side. In terms of personality, he is a Chad. A jock. Or rather, he is a Chad on the inside and a geek on the outside. This is crucial. Please believe me and do not forget it. The musicians of Far Far Away are fairly interesting characters, and we do get a little bit of background info on them when we see the high school in Shrek the Third. Here we see the youth of Far Far Away and beyond, and how they are raised and taught. It's likely Reggie went to school here, given it being the only significant place we see a school band in full fashion in these movies. It makes sense too. I mean, I do believe a good chunk of Far Far Away goes here. I believe that he went here and left a clear Reggie-shaped impact in the school. But then I rewatched a scene and a realization hit me like a ton of bricks. He did absolutely go here, and he did influence the school. This pushes my upcoming theory into being slightly more likely because get this. When Shrek goes to the assembly, the band in the background does the exact same thing Reggie does. Shrek comes in and they deviate from their course to play an instrumental rendition of a meme. In this case, All Star.
For those who are sane and don't worship meme culture, you might not recall, but All Star by Smash Mouth is Shrek's very own theme song. It's a joke, it's funny, and here we see the Shrek films doing it before it was cool, just like Reggie. A meme-worthy instrumental intrusion? This band is suspicious, and Reggie certainly is tied to it. He went to school here, like the vast majority of far, far away boarding schoolers did. Reggie is a Chad on the inside, geek on the outside. In a high school full of division, the only point of unity is inside jokes. This is universally applicable memes. We see that in school, the band geeks, chess nerds, and jousting jocks are all united in their goal of one meme in particular. Arthur Pendragon, the butt of every joke. The unity of this school is commendable, but how did it reach this point? I think Reggie assassinated the king. Reggie is notable enough to be featured in Shrek 2 above all other instrument players in the Royal Summons band because he's the improviser who is just that good and smug enough to throw in his improv song. This small group of musicians seems to be used for the most important of important deliveries and messages, meaning they need to be the top of their game, namely the trumpeters, what with their timely musical unity. During the Fairy Godmother song, we see another band of sorts, but this is the much larger band responsible for parties and balls. Plus, there's only one less competent brass player here, and we seriously don't get a good enough shot to see if it's actually Reggie or not. I'm leaning towards not because these aren't very smug musicians, and also because in the first film we see more meme-like ones. An accordionist accompanying Robin Hood, and in Shrek 4 we see the Pied Piper, both with equal meme talent. The Piper was in the alternate universe, but at the end we see the Prime World's rendition because, like I said before, I think some semblance of the alt timeline's memory seeped back into our main ones, hence the Ogre Fam as well. My point is that someone in Worcestershire Academy is outputting these snarky social rejects to mock the hierarchy. From what we've seen, Reggie is the one with the most important job and the one with the most timely meme skill. This implies that he's both best in class and the originator. This isn't just bored band geeks, this is them inserting their band class boredom into the most serious of situations or abusing the power of music. My point? The cult of Reggie, or whomever else could possibly be exporting these corrupted musicians from Worcestershire, is doing so as a power play. The United Bullies have targeted themselves onto Arthur, which would imply once again that the whole school, and whomever originated this inside joke, has the goal of bringing down the monarchy one joke at a time, until royalty means nothing anymore. Merlin was the only one who took an interest in Arthur, and he ended up quitting from stress, neurosis, and fatigue. See? Absolute correlation. At first I thought maybe Merlin created this meme as a failed experiment. I mean, he does hilariously hijack a piano during the climax, and it would explain his regrettable stress. But then I thought, no, because Reggie. So Reggie, or whomever, pushed this school to mock royalty in the form of extant music, physical bullying, and mental abuse, clearly has had a bad experience with royalty themselves. Sounds a hell of a lot like my theory tetralogy on the Fairy Godmother. This also means each theory proves the other because we slowly get more and more evidence that the previous royals of Far, Far Away were indeed pretty nasty and got what was coming to them. Unfortunately, Queen Lillian is quite kind, so she gets the brunt of everyone's revenge during the films. Reggie, or the other unknown originator, has saved the masses at the expense of royalty, at the expense of Arthur. I feel as if in some way Arthur's dad wanted to get back at the family he didn't belong to, so he staged all of this somehow, but Reggie is not Arthur's dad. Remember, Arthur's dad is blonde. Perhaps this is the revenge of some sort of joker or a jester, doing it the only way they know how to, memes. But Lillian's maturity likely eliminated the need for such entertainment. Again, there are signs that the previous royals, though, they were nasty. I do want to highlight that by all of these actions, Harold the Frog was killed so Arthur could become king. Who did this? There's a lot here I could spin, but the answer is really quite simple. Harold died from being an extremely old frog after the Fairy Godmother's magic vanished from him. Merlin's magic is also sort of bizarre. I think he might be a Rumpelstiltskin-esque witch as well. Anyways, Reggie did not assassinate the king, but I do believe he did unwittingly in being one of the many pawns in the game of the Fairy Godmother's plan to bring down Far, Far Away. Reggie himself has an instrumental cult of meme lords who abuse royalty whenever they can in the slightest of ways that they can, from the second
second they hit this high school. The fairy godmother uses memes to her advantage. The reason that Arthur was treated so brutally is because he was royalty. Was it worth it? Well, he will only perpetuate the cycle because his last words to Worcestershire were mocking and condescending about how he's finally become king. A vicious cycle that humbles royalty only drives the commoners up the wall. Now there is one final thing I want to touch upon, and it's that I finally have a genetic depiction of Arthur's mother. She very likely has brown hair and the maiden name Le Fay. In bonus features on the Shrek 3 disc, we see profiles of characters and see one called Morgan Le Fay, who states to be Arthur's cousin. There is a chance she could in fact be the daughter of Reggie, though that is extremely unlikely. Point is, Le Fay is not a name heard elsewhere in these films, and the genetics are not consistent with the blonde royals, meaning she's on the other side. Arthur's mother was a brunette then, which may assist us in the future. There's lots of shifty stuff overall. I do wonder how Reggie and friends got out of the swamp and back to Far, Far Away so quickly, or how they even got there. At the end, it sort of looks like they just dive into the swamp. They don't have any transportation, so there you have it. Reggie is either the leader of or a high-ranking member of a meme cult that uses musical comedy to take down monarchies. What a conspiracy. What bullshit.
Shrek. This movie has twist after twist after twist and many mysteries. In my last Shrek video, which I posted a year ago, I delved even deeper into the fairy godmother's plan and explained all of it, including the parts not explicitly said in the movie. And this time, I'm going to explain how the dragon can have mutant donkey babies. I'm the Theorizer, and I'm going to call these things Donkagons. I know that everyone else seems to call them Dronkies, but I think Donkagons sounds way cooler. And before we start, remember, this is just my theory as to how all of this works. I don't know if this is obvious or if others have considered it, but it's just for fun, and I feel like I should explain it for those who don't know. Besides, I love making Shrek videos. Alright, I'm ready. Let's Shrek-explain these atrocities. So it's no secret that Donkagons are impossible. They are hideous abominations to nature, and no donkey can breed with a dragon. I mean, how in the name of Donald Trump would that work? Honestly, I don't even want to explain the traumatizing procedure, dare I say trek, that this noble steed would need to venture on to accomplish this. Oh my god, I just barfed. My point is, Donkagons are paranormal little freaks of nature. They don't happen. Not even in the logic of something as redunculous as Shrek. Unless they are aided by something, of course, that is not natural. Something supernatural. So what do we know in these movies to be supernatural? Well, the magic, of course. And as Puss in Boots says, the fairy godmother is the largest supplier of hexes, potions, and magic in the whole kingdom. So does this somehow root back to the fairy godmother? Well, it isn't like this part pixie pain in the pants ever even met Dragon. At least not directly. Well, I suppose there was the fact that she created the dragon to guard Fiona's tower, but I'm referring to after that. She never cared to help Donkey and the dragon. Why would she do anything to help them achieve their happily little quaint mutant family? And so, I reprised that last line I made. It wasn't directly. The fairy godmother's happily ever after potion was stolen from her cottage by Shrek and his bumbling buffoons. When Shrek drank from it, he and Fiona shifted into humans. It also changed various other things rather than just their bodies. See how when Shrek transforms back into an ogre, his clothes change back with him. Initially, when he became human, they never did that. His clothes just stayed the same, as they didn't really need to change. But basically from this, we know that it isn't just their bodies that change. It's everything that pulls together their happily ever after. That's how the potion literally works. Notice how Donkey and Shrek change forms at the exact same time, despite the fact that Donkey drank the potion slightly earlier than Shrek. Also, notice how Donkey turns back into a donkey at the exact same time. And this can only mean one thing. The potion he drank was not responsible for his transformation into a horse. It was Shrek and Fiona's potion that changed him. The fact that it changes him at both the same times as Shrek, and that we already know that other things change with this potion, proves in every way that Donkey was turned into a stallion because of Shrek and Fiona's drinking, not because of the one he drank. And why did he change? Because in their happily ever after, they constantly call him their noble steed. So, based off of this incredibly powerful potion, he was altered into exactly that. A noble steed. I mean, if he drank the potion himself, why would he turn into a noble steed? It just doesn't make sense, but here, with this explanation, it does, and it fits in pretty much every way. But I suppose you could argue that they all simply changed at midnight and then had like 24 hours of lasting effect, but that was never a rule or law it had, and the chance of that happening is never stated as likely or probable. Besides, even if it were likely, it wouldn't really matter when you consider the noble steed fact, and also what I'm about to say. And what does this all mean? How am I tying this all to the Dunkgons? Well, right after Donkey drank the potion, Shrek said that it probably wouldn't work on donkeys. Yet, it would work on an ogre? Why would it be fit for an ogre and not a donkey? Aren't they both animals? So we know that it would still likely work on a donkey anyway, since it works on Shrek, but I'm guessing it's directly intended for humans only. And so, this arises the question, what would result from Donkey drinking it? Most viewers of the movie didn't second guess it, and those who did assumed that the dragon either became a stallion like Donkey, or more likely, a larger, shinier, more powerful dragon. And while both those are good, it doesn't explain the fact that Donkey only became a horse because of Shrek drinking the potion. So what really happened when Donkey drank it? Dun 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 dun! Dunkagons. These little mutant freaks of nature are the result of Donkey drinking the happily ever after potion. What does it promise? Divine beauty, happiness, and comfort. Does it say that this beauty must be physical? No. No, it does not. Is happiness limited to ogres becoming humans? No, of course it's not. The beauty of a family and miracles of giving birth to a litter of Dunkagons actually being successful. Only something magic could sustain, and oddly enough, Dreamworks made this potion say maximum strength on it for literally no extra random reason. Why that significance? Unless, of course, it was intended to do something big, like engage childbirth from miles upon miles away. And while it may have the power to do that, it's not like the fairy godmother actually knew that was going to happen. That's ridiculous. But what we do indeed know is that this fairy godmother's magic has the capability to create offspring that isn't the same breed. Want a direct example? Prince Charming. A fairy has a human son. Bizarre? Certainly. Out of the question? I think not. We've seen it twice now. Also, Dragon shows up in the after credits with her Dunkgons, having virtually zero weighing effect on the rest of the story. It's just so random and out of the blue, as they could have just as easily introduced them in the third movie. This being Dreamworks, there's always a significance to everything, making it likely that this final scene does in fact have some effect on the main story. Making it likely that this final scene does in fact have some effect on the main story. And what would that possibly be? Oh, right, happily ever after potion. Sorry, this is just me quickly butting in while editing, and I want you to notice something. Notice how when they're all transforming back, it's only Shrek and Fiona who are really glowing. Donkey just glows a little bit. This shows how it is all revolving around them, and that him turning into a steed is due to Shrek drinking it. I mean, they begin to flash out uncontrollably, while Donkey kind of just glows a little and shapeshifts. And one more point I have. Donkey fell asleep a few seconds before Shrek. This is because Donkey drank the potion a few seconds before Shrek, and was affected slightly before, but then they both transformed at the same time when Shrek fell asleep. I repeat, it is Shrek's drinking of the potion that turned Donkey. But there's one unfortunate blockage in this theory that will be hard to work around. Shrek and Fiona needed to kiss before midnight if they wanted to stay in their new forms. This is the only flaw in my Dunkagon happily ever after theory. Donkey and the dragon never kissed before midnight, as she was likely back in the swamp, but she does return at the very end. So how exactly does this potion work then? We have a bucket full of evidence and a supernatural answer to a supernatural problem, but this midnight kiss rejects everything. So let's try and work around this little barricade. This potion doesn't have many rules, but the big rule is to kiss your true love by midnight and make its effects permanent. But here's the thing. Dunkagons are literally born creatures. They cannot just fly back into the womb and be unborn. And disappearing into thin air isn't really a standard option either. So that's one kind of sort of reason. But then I also realized that Donkey was affected by the potion when Shrek took it, and he was also affected by his own drinking of it. So could Shrek and Fiona's undoing of the potion have somehow affected donkeys? That too is a possibility, but there's still more possibilities. Notice how Donkey himself wasn't exactly the one who was changed by the potion, it was his wife. Do you think this could have led to the effects on his love interest being full on and permanent? We may never know. But there's one thing I do know. If there's anything that the Shrek universe has taught me, it's that there's always a way to work around the laws of magic. See Rumpelstiltskin in the 4th movie. All of his contracts have a way to get out of them, but there are also other reasons why Donkey didn't need to kiss. And I have another option as to why it could have worked still. Another option is that maybe Shrek was right, and it works differently on donkeys. All of the evidence is here, and there are many different ways for Donkey and the Dragon to work around these rules, without even knowing it. So, I'm going to leave you with that. Shrek and Fiona's potion losing effect was sent through Donkey and Dragon. Or, Dunkagons can not be unborn. Or, Donkey's lack of apparent effects of the potion he drank led to dragons being amplified and permanent.
Or, it just works differently on donkeys. Either way though, this theory has value to it, and there's always a way to work around things like the potion's rules, especially when you are a donkey and a dragon. Also, and here's the big one, which I think is the correct answer. Notice how the one final warning on the potion is that it's not intended for those who are hyperactive or nervous, and this is likely for comedic effect of parodying meditations, but regardless, Donkey shows to be quite hyperactive, and Shrek looks at him, worried. So is that the official workaround? Does Donkey only partially qualify, thus breaking the rules? I think that fits, as, well, this is surprisingly random, and Shrek and Puss look at Donkey as he's acting all hyperactive. Such a weird thing to include out of comedy. Dreamworks. So that's most of what I've got for now. But I do know this. I am not done with this theory. I will try to return to it when I get a successful conclusion on how this potion's rules really work. I will decide on an answer. It has to be one of those 5 reasons, but most likely, the last one. Donkey breaking the warnings can result in altered outcomes, or maybe it's a good mix of all of them. Either way, until next time, I am the Theorizer, and I thought this theory was a really fun one to come up with and share with you guys.
The horrific abominations in the Shrek films that are the Dronkies, or as I call them, Donkagons, shouldn't be able to exist, right? What kind of crazy magic is this? A donkey cannot reproduce with a dragon, that's fundamentally insane. Luckily, about a year and a half ago, I'd spent weeks thinking it over, and I ended up making a full-blown video explaining what I think allowed these things to be born. Click the eye icon in the top right corner now if you want to view that first, since this is a big follow-up to that video. Basically, I ended up deducing that the happily ever after potion Donkey drank actually did have an effect on his true love. It made her into some kind of super dragon that allowed her to birth the abominations, all in the name of magical true love. This is supported by loads of evidence, and most people agreed with me on the idea. But there were a couple of fundamental flaws in my theorizing that I only noticed after uploading. However, I can successfully say that these so-called flaws are nothing more than mere stepping stones to expanding the theory even more. Hello, I am the Theorizer, and guess what? If I sound like I have something in my mouth during this recording, it's just because I've been quite sick for the past, several months, and that would just be, well, a repercussion of that. But guess what in regards to the theory? There's an immediate freaking bombshell of proof that Donkey drops in Shrek the Third that could be construed as a comedic joke, but the way it ends up logically playing off legit proves my whole theory. Shrek's all like, how could this happen? In reference to Fiona's pregnancy, and Puss in Boots hilariously begins to explain the reproduction process. Shrek cuts him off and says that's not what he meant. Then the joke. Donkey asks Puss, well, how does it happen? This, right here, people. Donkey very openly confirms that he has no idea how babies are made, yet he has a ton of children. Dragon comes to Far, Far Away at the very end of Shrek 2, and Donkey is shocked that babies are there. He just assumes that it happened. The only indicator that Donkey had before was that he said Dragon was being very moody at the beginning of the film, but he had no idea why. And he's shocked. Wait. At the beginning of Shrek 2, Donkey says Dragon is moody. At the end of the film, it's revealed that this is because she was secretly pregnant, and Donkey, with his redonkulous anti-knowledge of reproduction, had no clue he'd be a father. But this means that if drinking the magic potion caused the Dronkies to be created, then why was Dragon indicating her pregnancy before they even left? Well, this was the main and only criticism of my theory here, and I'm here to tell you it actually supports it. Dragon clearly had some crazy abomination brewing. Donkey doesn't know much about the reproductive process, but clearly something happened, intentional or not, whether he knew it would create babies or not, that caused her to become fertilized. And here's what my theory's point is. Dragon's birthing process would have been a horror show. This is unnatural, and no DNA would ever reform naturally into a split between a donkey and a dragon. She would have given birth to a litter of dead fetuses, broken, deceased, completely malformed babies that had no resemblance to either of them. This is why she was moody. She was pregnant. The potion didn't put the children into her, it healed them by temporarily making her some sort of super dragon so that she could successfully give birth to creatures that otherwise could never exist without the aid of magic. Anything she wanted would be born, a happily ever after, not a damaged and half-developed mess of organic matter. So then comes the big one. How are they still alive? Donkey is no longer a horse, and Dragon stopped being whatever crazy, enormous dragon Pegasus thing she became, so shouldn't the Dronkies become unborn? Shouldn't they straight up die? No, and here's why. They are unique. They are actual balls of life that were created by the spell. They cannot be undone. They aren't just physically altered things resulting from the potion actually birthed them. In fact, some people pointed out something else. Yes, the writers originally had Dragon become a Pegasus, which would suggest that the Dronkies looked like much more beautiful creatures before the potion wore off. Now they look slightly mutated, but it can't go so far as to unbirth them. It only went part way. Or maybe they'll get progressively dumber before dying in the 5th movie, I don't know. I mean, Charming was birthed by the fairy godmother's magic as well, and also by a king, as I proved in a brilliantly awesome 4-part series I did, which I love. Also, as the YouTube commenter CJ Harris pointed out, Dragon merely giving birth to the Dronkies or kissing them or whatever could have passed on the spell. After all, they weren't the ones intended to be affected by the spell, they were byproducts of it. And if the magic transfers, the undoing of the spell won't affect them either, since they are no longer in the womb. They can self-sustain because they are the potion. Additionally, as I said in part 1, the potion's rules directly state that nobody hyperactive should be drinking the potion, and Donkey is, well, immediately after drinking it, displaying that he's hyperactive. Shrek intentionally looks worried about the side effects this could have. Say, like, supercharging its effects on the other lover? I'm not sure, but again, they make a point about highlighting this warning on the potion. Or maybe its effects could have gone weird because Donkey can speak, and maybe he's not a real donkey. Anyways, that's my rebuttal to the debunkers. This theory is having the lid closed on it. For now. And until the next theory, which will likely be even deeper and on a sillier topic, yes, I'm the Theorizer. Out of the entirety of this film, I'm particularly interested in the parts we are not given much information about. This is obviously Megamind's childhood. We are given very little information about his home planet or what caused its destruction. We see a black hole is responsible, though there's always the chance something shadier went on. That's for another day, though. Right now, we need to move further into the future, Megamind's first day of school. What always seemed very weird to me was how Megamind hopped out of the jail and went to school only a few yards away. Why is it so close? Was this for comedic effect? Was it an exaggeration? A false memory of his life? No, it can't be that, because a couple scenes later we see it yet again at a different angle. It's like that in more than one scene. This school is right next to a maximum security prison. What kind of horrendous planner approved this? It's not even really a school, it's like a singular schoolhouse with a single teacher and a few quote-unquote gifted kids. But this is just according to the slogan. Gifted as in Megamind, gifted as in Metro Man, gifted as in, apparently, just all the normal children, and this girl who seems to have disabilities is included too. So is this school just for standard children, or is there something different about these children? It could just be a fun slogan, but then there's the frightening fact that right next door, there's a penitentiary housing the quote-unquote criminally gifted. Little gifted kids, crazy gifted criminals. Coincidence? I think not. These two have got to be tied. There's something too strange with all of this. Want more evidence of a direct correlation? Happy to oblige. How about the fact that the main mode of this prison's transportation appears to be a school bus? It's branded with the prison name, but lo and behold, something else can be seen hidden and blurred for a split second behind young Megamind. A blatant confirmation that it belongs to the Metro City School District. Holy crap! Well, it could just be an old bus that the prison was given by the school system, but the bus literally goes to the school still, indicating otherwise. And it could all be nothing, but Dreamworks did make a point of having each side of the bus read different things. And they made a point of hiding one of the titles in plain sight. The animators of Dreamworks usually don't go out of their way to change things like this. Most newspapers in the film just have a set of keyboard letters repeated over and over because they kept typing to randomly fill the text slot. So for this to be of significance to them, it indicates they mean something more. Why would a children's school bus have bars on the windows? Why wouldn't the prison just paint over the words that say school district? Well, as I said, maybe the two truly are tied. If all of this wasn't proof enough that something shady was never explained, then simply observe the schoolroom intensely. If you look at the bus drawn at the front of the room, it has a bunch of class children, and monitoring everything from the back, just sitting there, is a perfect depiction of the warden, observing, watching. Upon finding all of this, I had a single thought. Holy wow, these two are connected, obviously. Look at that. There's some reason that they keep a children's elementary school right next to a prison. They teach children who are gifted, hence why they sent Megamind and Metro Man there, but why? It seems to be a school of gifted children, intelligent, physically adept, each of them has something, clearly including the girl they tried to single out. But why build the gifted school next to a prison for gifted villains? Government testing? Precaution in case things get out of hand with the kids that are too smart? There's nothing really special about the teacher, and the so-called gifted kids sing Itsy Bitsy Spider instead of doing anything actually important. There's something strange going on here, and I think I'm on to something. Now, I have minimal evidence for what I'm about to say, but I'd like to propose it. Metro Man's adoptive parents, according to a close zoom I made on their presence, are named Bobby and Sally, and they are unbelievably rich individuals. Look at their mansion and the amount of gear they gave their son to let him flourish. Their son is an alien, one who, like it or not, would be quite alienated from everybody else. They don't treat him as a human. Everybody, even his own parents, treat him as a superior being, whether they love him or even fear him, but more on that in a sec. Even when Metro Man quits at the end of the movie, he says he's gotten tired of it all. He feels alienated and bored, so he degrades himself into a bad singer to be like everybody else. Common sense tells us he'd feel this way about himself, and he even does show it. So in order to make him feel at home or to fit in, his parents could have done many things. They can't exactly make him more normal, but they can make everybody else seem a bit more equal to him. Sort of like a staged method of therapy, such as a youth group or a school for so-called gifted kids, to make him feel like he's fitting in. No children there are visibly gifted or worthy of going to a school with such a title, they're just normal kids. If his parents and the government did have a school constructed for their future savior's benefit, then it completely explains why he had such authority to do whatever he wanted with the school. Rip it out of the ground, move it out far towards a beach, use it as a hideout for years after its disestablishment, throw around the teacher, etc., etc. And it only leaves the question, why would they build it next to the prison of criminally gifted convicts? Well, it could be to monitor Metro Man's ego, but more likely, Megamind. The only one who could possibly contrast Metro Man. Both are aliens spared from a supermassive black hole with some form of an immense gift, who received polarizing lives. It's the perfect making for a hero. As this movie's moral states, a superhero can't exist unless there's a supervillain. They tortured Megamind relentlessly in school for no reason other than to torment him. The school builds Metro Man's ego uncontrollably, and they only stop bugging Megamind once he's officially made his decision to become a villain, like the grand plan would have tried to achieve. And this movie's other grand moral is, yes, heroes and villains aren't born. They always have to be made. Now there's some good reasoning to this collection of evidence I've gathered. But why worship this kid? Why submit to this flying baby? It's as I mentioned before, deep down they all fear him. If his ego builds, or even his fear of being alone, things could get very out of hand. They need someone he can divert his attention to, someone who can make him feel good about himself. A perfect villain. And when Metro Man realizes the truth of what's happened, he quits. That's when he becomes humble again and finally tries to be like a normal human being. Watching the movie over and over again, I keep getting this feeling like the city thinks differently of Metro Man than we'd like to believe. They all convince themselves that they love him, but really think about it. The amount of danger and fear these people must live in is astounding. Not of Megamind, he really doesn't win, ever. They fear Metro Man and submit to him. This film's goal is to really go for a different take on superhero stories, and this is more proof of it. But the people who feel slightly spooked by Metro Man, they've built this false dependency on him, a sort of indirect form of Stockholm Syndrome, a condition where a victim falls for their captor. Metro Man feels trapped by the public and media, and the public feels trapped by Metro Man. That's why it truly was such a brilliant idea to fake his death. The city is a vast sea of deficient sheeple. A very short time after Metro Man dies, they all care so deeply about the ex-villain who saved them this time. They follow the leader. They've all been misled, and it's genuinely frightening. On the surface, they all react so expectedly to everything. They boo the villain instead of cowering in fear. They overly cheer for the hero. But under the surface, the sense of brokenness is very much so visible. Metro Man's powers seem to come with a general sense of false heroism that only he can naturally contain. When Hal absorbed all of the power, he immediately treated himself like a god. He developed a horrendously blatant sense of hero syndrome, which is basically where someone puts other people in danger just so that they can save them and act like a hero. And oh, Hal goes nuts with this kind of thing. It's his brain. It cannot handle it all, and this is why people have the right to fear Metro Man. His powers are uncontrollable, and the true fear he instills in people is an observation only apparent once you analyze and deduce your way to a shocker conclusion. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and first we have the golden question: what if the children in the school are just kids of the prisoners? Now, most of the time when people comment things, and this applies to all my theories, Coraline ones, video game ones, all of them, either I've already discussed that very topic in another video, or I'd already considered it before making the video and I dumped the idea. And this is no exception. The reason I ditched the idea of them being kids of the prisoners is because it doesn't make complete sense. Sure, they can visit their parents, but why place the school next to it, and why intentionally label them both as gifted too? There are just too many obvious logical holes in that idea, and it isn't normal or consistent with the logic the rest of this movie often shows. The kids also are not super evil, like I think I implied they weren't in the last video. Indeed, for those of you wondering, the school isn't next to the prison to teach possible criminals or gifted kids even. This is evident in the activities we see the kids doing, and ultimately in the end, I quite successfully tried to prove that it was all a setup by Metro Man's adoptive parents to make him feel loved and special. So those two counter-arguments to the schoolhouse's abnormal proximity to the prison are dealt with. On to more pressing interests. I think I myself have more proof for Megamind's villainy being staged by the government at Metro Man's parents' behest. Sure, they all bullied Megamind irrationally, but the warden also just kind of erases Megamind's several life sentences at the end. Sure, he saved the city, but he still indirectly caused a ton of destruction and was the literal cause of Hal becoming overpowered, yet his sentences were removed at the end. I believe this was because the prison took full responsibility for their actions in shaping Megamind's quasi-evil nature. But since the video came out far earlier this year, I've been continuously noticing further proof that the city is almost putting on an act to allow Megamind to escape and fight Metro Man. I'm serious, I cannot unsee this now. Firstly, Megamind and Metro Man have the same initials, MM. Were they subtly psychologically pushed into choosing these names by the government so that when Metro Man inevitably quit upon possibly discovering his life was a lie, the government could spend less money on the rebranding of the city's hero? No, that can't be, because the city itself was named after Metro Man. It has to be. Do you wish to know how I could possibly believe this? Well, we barely get to see a pathetic sliver of the boys' home planets, but on a big monitor in the background of the destruction, we can barely see what their planets' names are. Megaplanet and Metroplanet. What? So if the city named itself after the race of its savior, then they really are pushing his narcissism to save him and take it out on the other superior being they've kept pinned in a prison to solidify his role as evil. This city plays along like a mass fiddle orchestra. The warden, after catching Megamind, is stupid enough to take the watch that was for Megamind. He should know better. It's like he's playing along. Megamind has been captured a presumed 83 to 88 times by now, but seriously, I don't know, the film says both and is inconsistent when it wants to be, but that only indicates that when it is consistent, it means they want us to see it. Regardless of the evidence pointing to Dreamworks hiding this film with lore, we have to get back to solving it. Right, the evidence of the movie faking everything. After Megamind escapes at the beginning, the prison guards give him a whole 5 seconds to stand there and say, "I'll always be a villain," despite them immediately tackling the warden and jailing him only seconds prior. Even in his speech to the city, he says, "Who'd I be without you?" Interesting. Does he know they created his current psychology? He clearly loves to play along. Even more horrifying, what if everyone, Megamind, Metro Man, Roxanne, Richie, everyone knows it's an act? What if this movie is all fake? And yes, I know this is meta supreme, but in this movie, everyone is putting on a show. It makes sense up until, like, the end, sort of. Maybe Megamind is behind the whole plan of the government, but doesn't even know it. Well, that's all impossible. But then we get things like this. Roxanne is knocked out unconscious in the car when Minion kidnaps her. When Megamind then proceeds to throw a ton of scary weapons at her, she says, "Ah yes, your alligators, I was thinking about it on the way over." Excuse me, woman, but you were completely unconscious and had no idea you'd been kidnapped, you psychic journalist. So how could she think about it if she had no idea she was even coming? Well, either this is her or Dreamworks being inconsistent. So either it's proof that she's faking it, and by extension everyone, or it's proof that Dreamworks is once again being selective with what they deem is important for the quasi-internet detectives to see. Because then they have just one scene later, phenomenal attention to detail. You can see Metro Man walk behind Megamind. Yes, when it's revealed later in the film that Metro Man used super speed to go for a walk, he appeared behind Megamind, and here you can see a glimpse of him for a split second on the cameras. But, stupid Dreamworks, it's when Megamind is saying something different. Metro Man appeared when Megamind was screaming, "Fire!" sure, not when he was paused. It's not even the same moment. So they have this weird half attention to detail that makes it increasingly difficult to differentiate which things they intend to be inconsistent. They go so far as to show this one special brainbot move up from the crowd and go in front of Metro Man just so that they could prove there was a direct way in which Megamind was seeing Metro Man via camera. And this is very consistent. They didn't have to do this. Then you see a scene where the warden is still imprisoned and watching the TV in Megamind's cell. Wouldn't the other cops have let him out by now? And then Megamind, oh Megamind, he runs into the mayoral office and pretends not to know what windows are. You idiot. You had a schoolhouse full of them. You have a car with them in it. You even discuss them later. Are you faking? Is it an act? Well, duh, it's a movie, but I mean inside the movie's plot, is it an act? And then we get brilliant consistency, like the ice cubes he trapped the garbage in being rehydrated after it rains. Megamind also says various words, weirdly, that he doesn't mess up later. This movie shares so much lore in the form of subtlety. And then, at the end, Megamind sums up what he calls his day, saying he killed Metro Man, lost Roxanne, etc. Even later, Bernard says he had a terrible day. You mean to tell me that despite the fact that it changed at daytime so many times throughout the movie, it was still one day? No. An act? Lol. Now I'll have some idiotic haters telling me that I'm critiquing the movie for stupid things. I am not critiquing. I am differentiating deductions. I don't want to have another stupid dumb ways to die video misunderstanding of blunt people with no comprehension of what I'm doing. We see more inconsistency when Titan says to Roxanne, I know everything about you. I didn't know what kind of flowers you liked, so I got all of them. And it isn't played off as a joke at all. Titan literally says that he knows all about her, and then he says he doesn't know what flowers she likes. Like what? And when Megamind fights Hal, half the buildings in the city are abandoned. It's all a facade. There's nothing in them. It's like fake infrastructure is in place for battles to occur and damage to be apparently seen. And we see that whenever someone uses the watch, their eye color stays the same. Megamind has these intentionally huge green eyes, and they consume Bernard whenever he pretends to be him. Roxanne didn't notice this or his similar voice. Or maybe she did, and she pretended to love him all that time, so he'd clean up the park and return the paintings until her final kiss, where she'd intentionally pushed the buttons on his watch and used her news reporter acting skills to pretend to be shocked at this so-called revelation. Oh my god. Roxanne, you skank. She paused after he talked about being picked on in school. She stayed to get reporter intel. But then we see another inconsistency. When Minion poses as Megamind, his eyes aren't consistent with this logic. But they were for the warden. What? Is this movie tailoring its logic to give us a mini plot twist? Why? And why does the voice change for some characters, but for others who use the watch, it doesn't? Megamind probably knew Minion was the warden by looking at his eyes. I mean, that's why he apologized to Minion, to the so-called warden. He knew it. The eyes are clear. Anyways, I gotta chill out before me being too extra is contagious to them ratchet gangstas. If I reground myself, we can point out the most obvious of the obvious. They have a super technical looking system outside Megamind's cell, because they want him to think he's being captured seriously. They looked shocked when he forfeits, but the guards just straight up sleep on the job. They should be able to keep him locked up for good unless this whole system is just for show. And as I said in the last video, most of the newspapers just say gibberish in them, but not the ones during the opening credits. I need to see those in HD, but I only have Netflix, which actually prevents my computer from screenshotting them, so if you have the ability to snap them, send them to me on Twitter at the Theorizer YT. That would be helpful. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and if you recall last video, I brought up a very key point. Megamind's home planet is confirmed to be called mega planet, as seen on this big screen in the corner, and Metroman's home planet is Metro Planet. According to the Megamind Jr. novel, there is a mysterious third planet in their planetary system, which was eaten by the black hole before we got to see it, but I'll get to that later. Because we may not know the deepest inner workings of this fallen society, but there appear to be some general rules we can discover by looking simply at the brief scene we get. Megamind is grabbed by his parents as his planet is spaghettified by a collapsed solar body. He is rushed past a monitor that displays a time limit and a diagram of his solar system being demolished. He is rushed to an escape pod, given a minion, and his parents say he's destined for greatness, apparently, before firing him away. So why is he destined for greatness? Why didn't anybody else leave with him? I mean, they have enough technology to allow for this, as we see, and they're an incredibly advanced looking planet. All of this odd evidence indicates something isn't quite right with the picture. Why did they only save this baby? Did they want to collapse with their black hole? Did they want to, however, send away one super smart baby to go to a far less fortunate planet so he could give them their alien benefits? I mean, possibly. I mean, it seems similar also to what Metroman's planet likely intended to do, but why did nobody else escape? They all appear to have super high tech, but why do they wish to destroy all of themselves but one? Seriously, like, Megamind can easily escape the planet. Why can't the rest of them? They have high tech. We see it in Megamind's toys. Well, maybe they did it to themselves, because maybe, like Metroman and Megamind were destined to, they fought against each other. Seriously, think of Metroman and Megamind's almost innate will to oppose each other. I feel like their races both had some sort of lasting battle or fun feud. They'll go down so long as their enemy goes down with them. With their intensely advanced technology, they should have easily been able to predict and evade the black hole, evacuate their planet early and save everyone, but they chose to stay. Megamind's planet wanted this to happen, and so did Metroman's home planet. If they wanted to go down together, which is currently the best explanation for them staying, then I have a question. Did one of them use the black hole as a weapon, say, by hiding it from the other's technology, or even futuristically creating it? I have no proof for it, just what little logic deduction I can use, but as you can see, there's a whole other story here. And I guess it's also expected that, like our government probably would do, Megamind's home planet's government likely hid all of this from the public as there is mass hysteria, but that is likely to be expected, I guess. Megamind was the sole survivor of his planet's cataclysm, but why him? Was he saved because he had an amazing intellect? Well, we don't know for sure, but I think we can assume that his whole race was naturally intelligent, as shown by the big heads. So then, perhaps he was special in another way. Well, how? The only thing that comes to mind is that he was from some sort of special program on their planet, or from a family or a group of elite certain people. Perhaps a royal family on their planet, or some other thing that entitled him to be the only survivor by supposed request of the government who knew of the impending planetary demolition. But survival from the black hole, that's not all his royalties entitled him to. Are we just going to overlook the fact that his parents gave him a damn fish and called it his minion? What entitles him to have a minion? What kind of baby is worthy of a legitimate servant? Certainly no ordinary member of this alien race. Megamind's special. Maybe they birthed him 8 days before the black hole on purpose. They planned ahead and, along with their enemy planet, sent away their greatest legacies while killing themselves. Some sort of ridiculous genocidal dramatic flair between their epic battling. Now, I would say that Megamind's planet was the evil one in the pair, but they seemed fairly nice from the 15 seconds or so we got to see them. It's Metroman who was inherently narcissistic. It makes sense. Megamind's parents said that he was destined for greatness, so the opposite side of the coin would be infamy. Not that this is an important point or anything, but yeah, their dominant physical abilities likely would have garnered the same reaction I theorized Metro City had on Metroman, but the planet would have it from the rest of their galactic quadrant. And so, all of this comes down to one being, only one person has the true knowledge of all these societies. Megamind and Metroman hadn't been fully exposed yet to their worlds before their annihilations. The rest of both races were obliterated, all but one. Minion. Minion is the only thing that has experience with these societies. Megamind's parents say that Minion will take care of Megamind, so clearly Minion is experienced with their world when Megamind is a baby, and we hear his adult voice yelp when Megamind blows up corn in the school, so he is the only being that knows everything, yet he says nothing about it in the movie. Well, let's look closer. He's a fish, a very small fish, with maxed out intelligence for his tiny species. Why? Well, let's look even closer. Minion is clearly intended to be able to handle any planet. H2O is one of the most commonly adaptable materials, if this movie has shown us anything, as both Metroplanet and Megaplanet clearly had an incredibly similar atmosphere to Earth, since Metroman and Megamind both show no negative effects when inhaling our air. So they gave Megamind a minion that could adapt to water so he could fit on any planet Megamind went to as well. I mean, clearly Megamind's family targeted Earth regardless, since it looked aquatic with its blue water and atmosphere, so hence an aquatic minion. But again, we aren't looking close enough. So I looked at Minion, really looked at him, and I found the antenna on top of his head. How did I not notice this? This is never explained. Why is something electronic going on with this fish? What's with the antenna? What is he sending or receiving? What is inside of this fish's brain? And then it hit me. This thing, this tiny, small, little animal, most likely the main species from that aforementioned third planet, was the only way to fit another person into the escape pod. They needed a small animal who could fit into the pod with baby Megamind because clearly the parents could not. It was also likely a part of the genocidal agreement between the two planets who sent off their prodigies to not send off anyone else with them. I believe this thing was the ultimate workaround. I believe that Megamind's race snuck another one of their own into the pod in the form of this fish. This thing has the transplanted brain of Megamind's brother.
Oh, but stupid Theorizer, what proof do you have that it's his brother?
Well, sarcastic hypothetical viewer who sounds identically to me, it might not be his brother. It could be, and likely is, an actual minion or butler of the family. It doesn't matter which acquaintance of Megamind's family it is, but it's an experienced, related member of Megamind's race inside of this damn fish. Megamind's family likely struck a deal with this mysterious third planet in which the fishies got to save one member of their species at the cost of that fish's mind being taken away and replaced with what we know as Minion. And it is an antenna. Clearly it's what Megamind used to allow Minion to tune into his big gorilla suit and control it perfectly. Megamind's family snuck a fish into the escape pod whose mind had secretly been electronically reconnected to a servant of Megamind's government. This let them save one member of that third planet's race while simultaneously breaking their prodigy agreement with Metroman's planet to better benefit Megamind in stopping the true villain in the duo of races they've spared from the black hole. Metroman, another genius baby prince from a dominant and narcissistic race of humanoid supers, is the true villain in the duo, as proven near unequivocally in my January logical induction of this movie's Metro City hive mind. Case rested. Click subscribe.
Since Easter's right around the corner, I thought I'd analyze a film that had a bit to do with Easter. As you can see here in my top 50 favorite CG animated films, this movie is one of my top 10 favorites of all time. I love the idea, the plot, the villain, and most importantly, the secrets. Before watching this, I would definitely recommend watching Rise of the Guardians if you haven't seen it. Now here's the analysis. Now, I'm not the first person to realize this, but during multiple flashbacks, we see Jack Frost's sister named Flea, and she looks strikingly similar to the two main kids in the film, Jamie and Sophie Bennett. When the director, Peter Ramsey, was questioned in an interview about their relation, he stated, "Who knows, it could be possible, it's one of those movie mysteries." So, if anything, these kids would be the descendants of Jack Frost's sister. So as usual, I'm going to genetically, analytically, and deeply study the inner workings of this movie to see if the director was legit or just messing around. Step 1. Genetics. The most common visually hereditary traits are eye color, handedness, earlobe style, hair color, and freckles. Since brown hair and brown eyes are the darkest of all colors, they are dominant throughout the generations. So if Flea has brown eyes and brown hair, so should her descendants. Lucky here, Jamie's mom and Jamie both share those traits, and not only the trait colors, but the exact shade of brown eyes and hair as Flea. Sophie Bennett is either adopted or has an extremely unlikely and rare trait, possibly from her dad, who we don't meet, as she has bright blonde hair and green eyes, which are completely recessive genes. As far as the freckles go, Jamie has some, and so does Flea. Now time for the handedness. Are they right or are they left? Dreamworks intentionally makes certain characters left and right-handed in most of their films, and they stay consistent throughout. After watching several clips of Jamie, I successfully concluded that he was in fact right-handed, the dominant trait. And although there are very few scenes with Flea, the only one that has her use her hand is the one where Jack drowns. This is the only time she signifies any favorability towards one hand or the other, and guess what? It was her right hand she instinctively reaches out with. No coincidence, it is proof. Finally, her earlobes. Jamie's are attached, the rare trait, so Flea must have attached for this aspect to follow through as accurate evidence. It's extremely difficult to see, as her hair is always in the way, but if Jack's earlobes too are attached, then this family follows the rare earlobe trait, meaning it's likely hers are attached as well. So it's now official that the genes 100% match up. Step 2. Further plot analysis. Jack Frost has a significant bond with Jamie, one that can't be beaten, kind of similarly to the one he had with his sister? And the same town is used throughout the entirety of the movie, and this shows consistency throughout the generations. Other than these bits of evidence, though, I haven't found much more, but what I've already got is plenty. Jack Frost is the 300-year-old ancestor of Jamie Bennett, and they bond so well as Jack's memory of Flea lives on in Jamie. When dealing with the evidence, I noticed more. I'm going to look into the history between the moon and the boogeyman and try to deduce an answer to that, and also what the moon represents. The relationship between Jack and Pitch Black is extremely mysterious, and I feel very eager to get into it later. However, until next time, I'm the Theorizer.
What I'll be doing today is altering my first Kung Fu Panda theory. In this theory, I discussed how certain things in the movies weren't very logical, and I explained how they could be logical and how it totally changes the story. The Poe is dead theory is my second one, and I want to steer as far away from that one as possible, so we'll only be sticking to the parts of my original Oogway theory. Let's go. Master Oogway is a pivotal character in the Kung Fu Panda series, and when I saw him in the third, I was all like, "Oh yes, I be prepping for this since movie number duh." But Oogway's a fairly suspicious character. He's not evil or anything, but there's a lot in which he hasn't revealed. You probably haven't wondered about this, but I have. Am I the only one who finds it bizarre that Tai Lung was just dropped off on the porch of a martial arts training station? Like, I realize that it's a kind place with people who can care for him, but it's also a place of constant peril and danger, with its inhabitants being masters of violence. I just find it a bit odd that anyone in their right mind would actually do this. Poe's mother abandoned him in a radish box, but that was because she was about to be murdered by a feathered freak. But let's come back to this in a minute. We know that Oogway's lifelong goal for Shifu was to help him achieve inner peace. And how does Oogway go about doing this? He uses Poe. If you haven't noticed, Poe is ultimately the route to Shifu's inner peace. A student who can be taken under his wing, or his gigantic Dumbo ears, and Poe's actions lead Shifu to finally mastering inner peace, putting his frets about Tai Lung to rest when his own student finishes the job. But what is the relevance of any of this? Well, prepare to have your whole perception of Master Oogway changed. My theory is that Tai Lung was a failed attempt. Oogway always knew who the Dragon Warrior would turn out to be. Poe. So why even bother with Tai Lung? Inner peace. A baby snow leopard at the front door of a martial arts training academy. Old Oogway pushing his student to his potential. Oogway put the baby at the door. Sounds a bit far-fetched, let me explain a little more. Right there, right when Shifu opens the door, it's been put there. And this is exactly the kind of thing Oogway would do. A child. Raising a child is a route to inner peace. Becoming a parent. It changes Shifu, but Tai Lung turns sour and undoes all the peace Shifu gained from raising him. As we see, this affects Shifu in detrimental ways. He can't even hurt Tai Lung. In Dreamworks' rendition of China, you can openly adopt anybody. The best and most immediate example, of course, being the feathered flyer of Mr. Ping. He openly adopts Poe right after finding him. So tell me just how far-fetched it is for Oogway to do the same. This is all supported in how Shifu and Oogway act. I find it genuinely hilarious that Oogway, a tortoise having total control over his immortality, kills himself right as he predicts Tai Lung has escaped. He isn't cowering, and he isn't randomly dying. He is simply letting Poe do the work. Poe needs to be the Dragon Warrior. Shifu's student needs to succeed, and Shifu masters inner peace, just as Oogway had so desperately wanted him to. Tai Lung, the student that failed at encapsulating the image of the Dragon Warrior. Oogway has a pattern of sending Shifu unique kids, but this one backfired, and hard, leading to a Dragon Warrior versus anti-Dragon Warrior 1v1. Oogway is smart. He plans things centuries ahead of time. It's just how he is. Random baby on the Jade Palace steps. Sneaky old bag with his perfect pink peach tree. Hear what Oogway's constant motto is. There are no accidents. No accidents? Then how could you mischievous millenarian, have ever even considered Tai Lung in the first place? To have not intervened sooner? How could you consider him to be the Dragon Warrior in the slightest? If you're so psychic, then why would you allow Shifu to train him all those years? If you are a prophet that lacks accidents, and can detect if someone is a legend or abomination just by looking at them, then why would you start all of this to begin with? The answer is really simple. Realizing the fault in Tai Lung immediately, Oogway let Shifu train him. It kept Shifu preoccupied with happiness, but simultaneously, this had him trained into the anti-Dragon Warrior. Shifu's inner peace is this reptilian reject's main priority. In his not final words, he says that Poe must fulfill his destiny just as Shifu had to fulfill his. And what is Shifu's destiny? To let go of the illusion of control. Oogway speaks in allusive riddles and metaphors, and right here, he is referring to how Poe will become the Dragon Warrior. He is telling Shifu that things will flow as they should, and that Shifu can't have control of every aspect. From this perspective, Tai Lung's rage is extremely justified. He rambles on about how it was Shifu who pushed him to training until his bones cracked, and it was Shifu who filled his head with dreams of becoming the Dragon Warrior. I even translated Tai Lung into English, and it translates to Great Dragon. And finally, he says that it was Shifu who denied him his destiny. Okay, Tai Lung, hold up. Even Shifu says that it was clearly Oogway who denied your destiny. It was Oogway who chose not to intervene all those years, building up your passion to crush it. And it was Oogway who taught Shifu how to train harshly. So honest to God, what else could Oogway have done that night? Why would someone dash up the hundreds upon hundreds of Jade Palace steps when they can just as easily drop off their child in a town populated with plenty of kind, safe people? In the spirit realm, Oogway tells Poe that he was to be his true successor, and that he chose Poe as he could tell he symbolized the yin and yang. He saw the past and future of Kung Fu when he looked at Poe. He also implies to Poe, and literally tells Kai, that he set Poe on his path so that Kai would be stopped. That's what the Dragon Warrior is. The protector of Kung Fu, bearer of the Yin Yang, defeater of Kai, and Oogway's successor. Which leads to the final question and the very interesting implication of, if Po is Oogway's successor, then was Oogway the original Dragon Warrior? Oogway's symbol on his cape is of a yin-yang symbol composed of a long serpent-like shape, with spiraling appendages. A dragon, perhaps? I don't know. It's meant to be art and therefore metaphorically displayed, so how about the fact that the Jade Palace is modeled with dragon imagery everywhere, and it was Oogway who built it? It's just that all of this is an implication of Oogway's logic, but this is all for another theory entirely. And so, before I finish off today's video, there was something else that I noticed, which may or may not be correct.
The first movie's villain is Tai Lung. He is a vicious, enraged, active villain. The second movie has Chen. He is much more graceful with his movements and usually avoids physical contact, preferring the usage of sophisticated weaponry. The yin and yang represent two halves of the universe. Yin is the passive, female, earthly aspect, and yang is the heated, active male side. And these two villains wanted to become both the yin and the yang. Tai Lung wanted the Dragon Scroll, which embodies the yin-yang, and Chen wanted to literally become it, but both failed. Do you know why? Because they both only demonstrated one half. Po, on the other hand, shows all aspects of both sides. That is what Oogway saw in him, his calmness but also his extravagance, his body shape and colors. And the third movie has Kai, who represents both halves, but he is sort of like an anti-yin-yang, demonstrating everything that it shouldn't. So that's my theory on Kung Fu Panda. Wrong or right, I still think it's a very interesting topic for discussion, and I don't want to be accused of slandering Oogway like in my last video. Regardless, these movies are my favorite Dreamworks movies. Next to, of course, a couple others, but they're definitely in my top 3 favorite franchises.
Anyways, today I'm going to be looking at the two main villains of easily the funniest Dreamworks films, the Madagascar franchise. For those who are unaware, in the first Madagascar film, all of the animals have escaped the zoo and they've arrived at Grand Central Station, where all of the humans are running wild in terror. All except an old lady, that is, who's just walking slowly and casually until she suddenly lashes out insanely and viciously attacks Alex the lion with karate? Yes, it is bizarre that she has such insane attacking abilities and the capability to literally flip a multi-100-pound lion. Then she yells "Bad Kitty" at him. When the police have the animals surrounded, the old woman somehow bypasses their blockade and disables Alex by destroying his testicles. We also see her in the Christmas special entitled "The Madagascar Penguins in a Christmas Caper." She purchases Private, the penguin, thinking he's a chew toy she can give to her poodle, Mr. Chew. While she sits watching the game, her dog fights the penguins behind her, and when she realizes what's happened, she blames the dog for her trashed apartment. It's not until Madagascar escaped to Africa that we see her again, and this time, not as a cameo. She's the main villain. She's on an African tour and she encounters Alex again. She whacks him with her handbags some more and he yanks her from the touring vehicle. The fight that ensues really demonstrates her abilities to us, whatever skill she's trained in. Obviously, she has some sort of formal training in, I'm assuming, karate, or at least what's left of it now that she's in old age. The rest of the film involves her methodically calming down a massive group of panicked tourists, establishing an entire African safe haven, preaching fearlessness, and even beating up an even larger lion. According to the bonus disc information, she brought said massive lion back to New York in a kitty cage. I'm assuming she's moved on from Mr. Chew at this point. But this old woman, known only as Nana, is nothing in comparison to the third film's villain, Captain Chantal Dubois, the unrelenting animal control officer hired to capture the group of animals. She's got Nana's abilities, but to the utmost extreme. It looks like she's trained in the most effective fighting styles, perhaps Krav Maga, and definitely parkour. Her abilities are in fact so powerful that she borders the abilities of a Terminator. That's her equivalent. There's no doubt about whether she's trained or not. This woman is a titan of body control. She can survive anything she's hit with, and she won't be slowed down at all. She has a deep understanding of the animal's psyche and how to communicate with them. She doesn't second guess their massive plane or the fact that they're driving cars, but her visions, impulsive, reckless determination, and her perception of reality exceeding ours meets her with almost every single symptom of what psychologists would call schizophrenia. She sees reality in frames, which allows her to dodge dozens of speeding bananas and allows her to roll out from beneath a train at the perfect time. She knows the exact placements to make in order to crash through windows and walls. She knows how to jump extremely high, and she's been trained on how to land from massive heights. She was only caught by the police when she overestimated her smarts, and she fooled them all in a matter of hours, trapping them in their own cell. She was only outwitted by the penguins when she thought the circus was run by an actual human. She apparently has the ability to heal her partners with her voice, and she ultimately succeeded at returning Alex to the zoo. Case in point, she's been trained to the maximum, only being defeated with her own tactics, tranquilization. She's one of the most swift humans in the entire world, capturing hundreds of animals, including our very own Mr. Chew. Which brings me to my main point, the mind-blowingly concealed connection between Chantel and Nana. Someone who's a normal viewer might say, it's just a kid's movie, they aren't connected, it's all for comedy. I would refer them to one of my many other videos on Dreamworks films to convince them otherwise. Someone who's a smart viewer, one that likes to think outside the box and theorize, might say that there's a chance of them being biologically related. You just need to look for the evidence, such as the rare trait of blue eyes they share, or other little genetic similarities. But someone who's an intelligent viewer, someone who considers all possibilities of critical thought, might say that the relationship goes far deeper than that. And it definitely does. First off, Captain Dubois is obviously schizophrenic. She sees hallucinations of animal musk, she has clear delusions of being an unstoppable goddess of animal entrapment, she has rapidly changing moods when she's in her mode, although she has a great lack of emotion overall. She's very apathetic and has no care about the repercussions of her actions. She's all around quite unstable. But could this simply have been a result of her training? We'll get back to that in a minute. Nana is Russian, as indicated by her accent and big fluffy hat I've seen on other stereotypical Russians. Dubois is very obviously French, as they establish many times. So a biological relationship is very unlikely. Not impossible, mind you, but still very unlikely. There's the chance that they could have been trained together, though. Nana has clearly got less abilities than Dubois, but that's just because of her very old age. They have the same methods of attack, except Nana's elderliness reduces her to simple flipping, kicking, and punching. In Madagascar 2, the tour guide approaches Nana after she's been brutally attacked, and she's totally fine. He tells her she's one tough cookie. Nana promptly says, "Brownies, Troop 416, Yonkers." Brownies are a subdivision of Girl Scouts for those unaware. So she was a Girl Scout when she was younger, about age 7 to 10 if she was a brownie. And Girl Scouts are a worldwide thing, so it could have been in Russia, though it's very improbable based on the context. Besides, she says Yonkers, and Yonkers is a city in New York State. It's very close to New York City. But here's where we encounter a problem with the plot. And on this channel, plot holes don't exist. Whenever I find one, I exploit it because they're great canonical evidence for a theory. The plot hole is this. Nana, while fluent in English, has a very thick Russian accent and indicates to the viewer that she's lived there for quite some time. If she moved to New York when she was 7 to join Girl Scouts, then there's a good chance that her accent would have easily morphed into an American one as she finished growing up. There's not a 100% chance that it would have, but it's very probable. So is she lying then about being a Girl Scout? What purpose would that serve? Well, there's definitely more. Notice how she responds to the man very quickly when he simply says, "Cookie."
You are one tough cookie.
Troop 416, Yonkers.
A word not even being used in the context of an actual cookie, like Girl Scouts sell, but rather just, "You're one tough cookie." She immediately jumps to telling this lie. It's almost like she wasn't responding to the word cookie, but rather to him saying, "You're tough." It's a psychology thing. For people to have prepared statements and to give too much detail when they're lying, to respond fast and prepped. So if she's hiding her karate training by masking it as a part of Girl Scouts, why? What is the purpose? Why conceal her true training? It means it's something confidential and important, not just a karate class, certainly not damn Girl Scouts. It's something deeper. Something that also gives her this ability to live in the woods, construct a miniature civilization, and calm down a massive amount of people. Something that warrants her having multiple secure locks on her apartment door. Something that I'll get back to in just a moment. So that was shady and deeply interwoven, but let's move on to someone extremely crucial to bridge the gap between Chantel and Nana. That someone being Mr. Chew, Nana's dog. As we know from the Christmas Capers special, Mr. Chew is a very old dog. He's lived with Nana since she was quite young. He's old, and appears to be actually rabid. He may live in a New York apartment, but we can see from pictures on Nana's wall that she took him on a previous trip to Africa. Seems to be a regular thing for her. But get this, Africa is a high-risk zone for contracting rabies, and certainly is where he could have gotten it, namely because the last happy picture of him shown during the credits is the Africa one. The following picture is just a silhouette image of him with crazily sharp teeth. Then the pictures end. It's like he just contracted it. He eats random objects that aren't food, he has a viciously open jaw, abnormal aggression, bloodshot eyes indicating a possible fever, chronic excitability, signs of drooling, and a lack of coordination as he jumps around like a maniac. Mr. Chew acts normal around Nana, but when alone or when his silhouette was being created in the presence of a person he did not know, his emotions shift rapidly and he goes crazy, like rabies causes dogs to do. The only problem is that rabies in dogs lasts for 10 days before they die, and that would mean something rather sad. It would mean Nana and Mr. Chew had just gotten back from their annual winter trip to Africa, and she'd had him put down due to the rabies, likely after she assumed he destroyed her apartment. Many people go on trips to hot climates during the winter, so they can escape the cold, especially when they live in a place like New York. We later see her in Madagascar 1, which takes place after the special, and she has a deep hatred for animals such as lions, perhaps because she's depressed that she had to put her canine down. She used to go so far as to buy Mr. Chew stuffed animals of Alex, but now she's depressed that her multi-decade-old poodle has died. In Madagascar 2, she goes on her annual trip again to honor Mr. Chew, and as revealed in the bonus commentary, she picks up Makunga and takes him home in a cage. Well, that was one massive but accurate tangent I just flew on, but it's a great fitting deduction. So how am I using this small fact of rabies in my grander theory? Take a moment to again ask the question, how does Mr. Chew make an appearance on Dubois' wall? Well, the only way this could possibly happen is if Nana hired someone she knew could get the job done. Chantel Dubois. And that is Mr. Chew on her wall. It isn't just a reused dog model of a poodle by Dreamworks, that's his character. To prove this, just look at how most of the other animals on the wall were not modeled for this occasion, and are actually repeated over and over on the wall. And of the couple models that aren't repeated, Mr. Chew is one of them. If you still choose not to believe that, then you can tell by the reddened eyes that it is Mr. Chew. These films are very superficial, but when you find any small thread you can tug, it pulls open the entire nether side of these films, everything we aren't shown, and it all connects. So now we have direct proof that they know each other. It's all here, but how do they know each other? Well, we must move back to the point about their training. Captain Dubois has a chance of being Russian, though her French last name says otherwise, and she isn't the type to get married, let alone get a new last name. Her accent could have redeveloped over time, but that's all less probable. The voice actress almost makes Dubois sound like a younger, more French version of Nana, but it is still very improbable, so perhaps they're friends, trained together, the skills they share, and the only job required of such training that I can think of that would require Nana to compulsively spew a prepared lie about would be some sort of secret spy team or police force. Based off of her age and her locations, Nana matches closest up for, I kid you not, the KGB, a decommissioned Russian spy chilling in New York. Chantal Dubois matches closest to the DGSE, the intelligence agency of France. She'd have been decommissioned after the stress-induced psychosis and retired to an animal control officer to fit her love of taxidermy. However, these two intelligence agencies are decades and countries apart. There's barely a connection at all that we could use in this situation. Nana would have been trained before Dubois was conceived, and all of this proves one thing, that despite everything I've been saying, there is still one possible biological connection, and that is Dubois being Nana's niece. Dubois' French last name wouldn't need to be given from marriage so long as her father was French, but Dubois' mother could very well have been Russian, an agent too, Nana's sister, and that training could have rubbed off onto Dubois. It's the only way, genetically, logically, and what is received when these evidence threads are connected. Chantal Dubois' mother is the sister of Nana. From a young age, Dubois showed a keenness for animal abuse, as we know from her little speech at the beginning. Such parents logically would have had her distracted with something else. Parkour? Krav Maga? Perhaps Chantal's mother was a KGB spy inside of France, and she married her father when the KGB dissolved. Chantal is French. Chantal is also Russian. The films make sense, and as crazy as this theory sounds, you cannot deny the evidence shown. Whether it be the mega lock on Nana's door, or Mr. Chu pinned to Chantal's wall, there's only one thing that can connect it all. And I've done, to the best of my ability, what many smart viewers of Madagascar have already tried, tying the two main female villains together. I hope you were enthralled, or in the very least, entertained. Until next time, I'm the Theorizer.
Dreamworks has a track record of making wonderful films. Some have deep world building like Shrek, some are absolutely ever increasingly hilarious like Madagascar, and some are extremely good in all ways of character like Kung Fu Panda. And while the general consensus is that they've dipped in quality since being bought out by Universal, that doesn't prevent them from still creating amazing movies. They're known for letting loose when it comes to comedy as opposed to stuff by Disney, and one of the funniest yet forgotten standalone films they have ever made is undeniably Over the Hedge. This thing is full of perfect timing, actually genius slapstick, and some of the best jokes and characters they've created henceforth. And it may surprise you that there's some unexpected lore to unpack, but if you've ever seen my videos before, you know that it's always the case with me. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and here we see Gladys Sharp, one of the most over-the-top, goofy, bureaucratic nutjobs ever put to animation. All of the jokes at her expense land well, and that's her purpose. But what can I dig up on her, and what might it unearth about the rest of this movie's unexplained backstories? I'm gonna explain all we know first and see what comes of it. So, Gladys Sharp is the president of a homeowners association. She seems to organize and dictate this El Rancho Camelot suburb in Chesterton, Indiana. Her rules are tight, strict as hell. She determines such petty things as the 54-acre suburb's collective grass length, and she flies off the handle when it's so much as half an inch longer than is acceptable in any given yard. nuts. Every other person in the neighborhood thinks she's, well, exactly like this. This community is extremely isolated from outside interference, and it has its own newspaper. It's a very exclusive arrangement, and this woman is so into her job because managing the homes of this kind of enormous gated community is a job on par with being a sort of city mayor. The suburb is huge. It's been debated whether or not she's even the real villain here. When they all debate in the street over whether Ozzy is dead or not, Gladys exclaims that she hopes he's not in any pain. This is genuine, despite her comedic knee-jerk reaction to kill it when he jumps and runs away. Gladys Sharp is not a bad person per se, but she is a workaholic and she loves being one. She loves perfection and keeping the community she regulates in check. She wanted all of the animals humanely killed before they got painfully injured, but after more and more madness, she lost her cool and demanded inhumane execution. She owns a highly pristine cat whom she loves, and she is by no means a sociopath of any sort, let alone a psychopath. She's just short-tempered and often past the point of rationale. So why is she like this? Where is she from? Was she elected head of the suburb? She loves her job, and avoiding it stresses her out, but how come? Well, it probably just comes down to, mostly, natural personality. I've basically already dissected her personality in another video. You see, Gladys Sharp looks, sounds, and acts exactly the same as this character from the animated tween television show Total Drama Island. She's just like the character known as Heather, whom I analyzed a few months ago. I'll just link that video in the box above now for those who want to know more about her nature. But could Gladys be responsible for more than she lets on? Is she a part of some government body that created this neighborhood to begin with? Probably. She's likely trying to move up the ranks, and this smaller, near-political pseudo-occupation seems to be her stepping stone. The brochure even reads the kind of thing she'd write. Only a select few will call it home. Despite it being fit for 50,000 families. But something about this brochure's map confuses me. It shows what's left of the forest. Apparently, the so-called forest is a minuscule patch of wildlife locked within a 54-acre suburb. Not only that, but this mini patch is marked for future development. Gladys couldn't just wait for the construction to move in behind her house. She was so agitated that she needed to exterminate the animals immediately. What this means is that the forest's remnants aren't going to be plowed down for quite some time. And what that means is that the gang of foragers are safe. For now. But this patch of woods is not a long-term solution according to the map. So in trying to dissect Gladys's motivations, I've just pieced together the fate of the animal's home. If RJ and the gang are stupid, they'll continue to rob the suburb, much to their soon-to-be exterminated detriment. They must get out of there. And then I saw the end credits scene where the gang has done it. They're out of the suburb. They're back over near RJ's old home near a mountainside highway, because they're robbing that same vending machine. I'm not sure this food is a long-term solution either, though. It's not meant for these kinds of animals, and the vendors will eventually stop filling it if it loses money. RJ made them like him. Is that really a good thing in the long run? A family out for itself? So again, if they keep stealing from the suburb, construction will move in quicker, which will push them out, which makes sense then as to why we see them at the vending machine, which itself is also a temporary solution in many ways. So we know the future of these poor animals, but what's going on with the other characters? Vincent was shipped off to a proper environment, Gladys was arrested, and Dwayne the Exterminator tried to escape, but most likely didn't ultimately. What kind of fate befits a person who breaks the laws of the state and the laws of luminous flux? Well, probably at least a few years in prison, right? She'll get out eventually though, but I'm not sure she'll be permitted HOA presidency again. Dwayne will probably stay in prison longer, unless he smooth talks his way out of a harsh sentence. He is, after all, not the one assaulting officers. So that's that. I've explained all character pasts and all character futures, but the reason I'm focusing so heavily on all these characters, their backstories, and what's to come for them is for one very key reason. There's something bizarre about these two humans in particular, and it took me so long to acknowledge what it is, but I finally got it. When you mix these two villains together, you get the single funniest villain ever to come out of a Dreamworks film, Captain Chantal Dubois from Madagascar 3, the Animal Control Officer. Chantal Dubois is the delusional and obsessed French woman with the personality of Gladys Sharp and the occupation of Dwayne LaFontaine. Let's see. Krav Maga? Check. Obsessive insanity? Check. Extroverted thinker? Check. Can use scent to identify all species in a somewhat supernatural manner? Check. Obsessed with the entrapment of animals? Double check. This is it. But the similarities aren't just limited to these human characters, they expand to the whole of the movies. Let's see. Both Over the Hedge and the first Madagascar were released only a year apart, both by Dreamworks Animation. Both feature a group of highly intelligent animals fighting for survival in a human's world where their voices are masked with squeaks and growls. And Madagascar literally promoted Over the Hedge. I have the damn DVD, I know these things. The comparisons never end. It's like they're the same movie, except one features animals learning about humanity, and the other focuses on animals separating from it. Madagascar 3 feels like it has such a hilarious and optimized villain because it is accumulation incarnate. Dubois mixes at least Nana, Dwayne, and Gladys. It's my occupation, literally, to identify each animated film company's individual multiverse and discover how each Easter egg and pattern similarity crosses over until they become a shared universe. It took me 12 videos and 3 years to solve only a third of Pixar's, and upon studying the technicalities of Dubois and Over the Hedge, I have come to one simple realization. We now have solid evidence to suggest that Madagascar and Over the Hedge take place in the same world. Have you seen that video I made a while back? Almost a year and a half ago, I made one of my only theories on Madagascar, where I tried proving that Dubois was Nana's niece. I'll link it above in the box now. It is one of my best videos, but I'm slowly becoming inclined to suggest that if it truly is a shared universe, and the parallels, by the way, are uncanny, then could it also be true that people like Dwayne LaFontaine and Chantal Dubois, both with French last names, could have gone to the same school or training facility? Some sort of extremely advanced anti-animal intelligence secret society? It's a leap, of course, but their abilities are spot-on identical, and their pattern matches swimmingly. They know animals are smart, and they know how to cut them down. This supposedly Texan exterminator is more than meets the eye. The French are breeding exterminator terminators to suppress naturalistic IQ in hopes of keeping humanity dominant. Obviously that's a jump, but the similarities between them are uncanny and desire explanation. It's sounding like a cliche Pixar theory-esque timeline right now, but it's not. This is merely a complex pattern. So, in summary, we've predicted Gladys, Dwayne, and the animals' futures. We've scanned for Gladys and Dwayne's backstories, and using loads of evidential patterns, I've come to the proposal of a shared universe here, with overlapping seen in the educations and surnames of Dwayne and Dubois. Mort, I despise you. Blame you for this mess you've caused. Now you must endure this roast. It's too late. You've lost. I've meticulously planned on my revenge, which spanned dozens of days. Blood, sweat, and tears were shed. Pathetically rich you were. For an episode, necrophilic hitches in your britches. What a load of crap. Get down like the animal you are. Chicken shit, babar, elephantine veil. You're on par with the worst of the worst. Lemur's own grandfather. How, may I ask, is your DNA a beaver's? 'Cause you're damn annoying. Flipping falsetto and back with your false head ass on crack, only flaunting what you lack. You're the Adam of your species and the Eve, might I add. How does that work? 'Cause the pieces don't add up. Who is your dad? Lies, you've got nothing to lose. Which is why you simply choose an inconsistent history. You're not a mystery. I'm the Theorizer, and a quick reminder to watch everything in that playlist I linked before this one because we're finally ready to string together a number of DreamWorks films through the usage of insidious cults, animal sapience, and a Lovecraftian reaper named Mort. Let's start by gathering all of the threads together and then interconnecting them. This will serve as the connection point for everything we've discussed henceforth. I'm not sure how long this will be, but there's a massive number of patterns, and I feel light must be shed on this. So, the 6 Mort videos detail the true nature of Mort from Madagascar and how he is, in short, actually an elder god locked in an eternal stalemate with a pantheon of interdimensional fruits that command the multiverse. They constantly invoke suppression mechanisms to keep him in a fractured state. Every time he slips into a higher dimension, they curtail him. Yes, as absurd as it sounds, it was one of the most comprehensive conclusions to be drawn from the 2 hours worth of evidence I had gathered. So, that was Mort. But now we skip back to a more medieval period and briefly establish the timeline of the Shrek films, so we can solve a variety of its characters. First, we spent 4 videos solving the fairy godmother and determined that she's a witch who's out to get revenge on the royal family that wronged her through any means necessary. It's implied that all of the lower class magical individuals share a similar spite towards the monarchy, and through either Merlin or some other contact of the godmother, a sort of apathetic army was being brainwashed in the schools of far, far away, using many tactics to their advantage, such as comedy and music. An insidious, seemingly innocent methodology. We then wrapped up the Shrek videos with an analysis of the magic the fairy godmother uses and how exactly it affects people, and more importantly, how it affects intelligent animals. I did this as a backdoor attempt to dig into the mysteries of the sapient animals in the DreamWorks universe, which, like the magic you'll see, ties in with Mort. We then moved back over to Madagascar and looked into another character who was privy to animal IQ, that being Capitaine Dubois from the 3rd Madagascar movie. We solved her past and threw in her ties to the old woman from the other films while we were at it. We finally left off this saga by seeking answers in the most important link of animal intelligence by far, over the Hedge. We managed to dig into the depths of another character who seems privy to the thoughts of animals, Dwayne LaFontaine, the Verminator. He has an almost identical tracking skill set to Dubois. You might be asking yourself right now, why am I recapping all of this? You might also be asking, how on earth do these all connect? And to answer both of those questions at once, I will simply respond with, I just explained it. Yes, Mort, the supreme god of animalistic intelligence, is a fast-tracked straight shot to the supernatural core of the DreamWorks universe's magic, animal awareness, and the many tactics that go into suppressing it at the behest of a worshipped pantheon of deities. An international underground network of suppression societies out to stop animals from dominating and stop Mort, or whatever force he initially represented, from rising once again. As I said at the very end of the Mort theories, Mort's dream works. Mort is DreamWorks because his dream works because he's the animal intelligence hub and center of everything. Yes, I told you it was a lot to take in, and probably not entirely considered by the filmmakers. But the shocking thing isn't that, it's that the evidence truly is there. So what the hell else am I supposed to do with it? Whether it was intentional or not, it still exists, and the patterns cannot be dismissed in my line of work. Before we interlock the past 16 videos on an even more fundamental scale, though, I want to dig into the other places we find intelligent animals and supernatural events within the DreamWorks universe. Again, I believe it all roots back to Mort, because I have yet to discover a more powerful character in the entirety of DreamWorks. Okay, breathe in, breathe out. This is about to go from 0 to 100, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Ants shows that ants are smart. Insects are sapient, aware, organized creatures, all the way down to the basest of levels. The DreamWorks universe has a focus on animals getting as smart as humans and becoming their equal. The Bee Movie is possibly the most crucial film I have ever seen, insofar as it is the first chunk that clicks every thread into my mental map. It details the dangerous precedent, a shocking event, the closest small animals have come to finding equal footing with humans. The crazy part is this: the pattern of humans versus animal intelligence was just something I inferred from Madagascar and over the Hedge, but like with Katie and Scrat, my theories are melding with reality, and I'm sort of in a state of utter shock because I think it might be completely true. The linchpin is that every time animals rise up, there's a human just waiting there to stop them, with utmost desperation and underhandedness. This lawyer, he's so desperate, my god. Why is he so obsessed? Give me a truly solid reason, not some mild iffy bullshit. I'm just itching to highlight what someone brought to my attention. Mort in the zoo. I think this is the ultimate fact I felt I was missing in the Penguins of Madagascar video. It's been staring me down like the Clint Eastwood of evidential treasure troves. How does the zoo know Mort's name? They label their toys as Mort plushies. How do they know his name? I have our answer already. It's been waiting for me patiently for months. Chantal Dubois isn't the only evil redhead out to crush the penguins. The linchpin is that every time animals rise up, there's a human just waiting there to stop them, with utmost desperation and underhandedness. Alice. She's so desperate, my god, it's been staring me in the face. What the hell? How'd I gloss over this? She's so bizarrely desperate to expose the penguins. She knows she's a part of something aware of Mort. In one episode where the penguins are exposed, she brings in the government for a reason. There's something out there, something lurking beneath the surface, and Alice knows, the zoo knows, the pattern. I need a minute to think. Oh, frick. You gotta be shitting me. I just solved it. The linchpin is that every time animals rise up, there's a human just waiting there to stop them, with utmost desperation and underhandedness. The racer from Turbo. He's so desperate, my god, so desperate to beat Turbo. It's everywhere, I'm telling you. At first I thought it was an infrequent pattern, but it's everywhere. Literally everywhere. You know, the reason I connected the Chantal Dubois theory in with my Over the Hedge theory was because I noticed a little something that I hinted to near the end of the Over the Hedge video. Both Chantal Dubois, a French animal control terminator, and Dwayne Lafontaine, an animal control verminator with a French last name, had superhuman abilities related directly to the tracking and extermination of intelligent animal life. They are evolving physically, just as the animals are evolving intellectually, and coincidentally, they both seem to have French origins. Sort of a coincidence. Let me think. I'm actually gonna search this up and see if, he... What? It is! It's another one! Oh my god! The racer from Turbo is French! Oh my god! This is bringing me to tears. What the hell sort of link have I stumbled upon? What sort of pattern is this? Guy Gagné from Turbo, he doesn't seem to be superhuman, but there is another unique link in that snails are notoriously French cuisine. Hot damn, I'm on a roll of some sort, but I don't know how. What the heck is it with French exterminator terminators? The linchpin is that every time animals rise up, there's a human just waiting there to stop them, with utmost desperation and underhandedness. The Boss Babies organization is out to stop the adoption of dogs. They're so desperate, my god. I think I might have mentioned it before, but I and many others have had sneaking suspicions that some animated films that look like they take place in the past are actually the far future. It's a neat little plot twisty trick, and for years I've been inclined to say that it's the case with Kung Fu Panda, as all of the Chinese animals speak English, wield the supernatural, and are wholly unhindered by a human race that does not exist, while simultaneously using the kung fu humans created. So if it's in the future, then yes, it might be to imply that Mort and his acolytes won this multiversal war, depending on what's actually going on here and whose side is with who. The linchpin is that every time animals rise up, there's a human just waiting there to stop them, with utmost desperation and underhandedness. How to Train Your Dragon is literally about suppressing less intelligent animals into submission before they can take over. It's so desperate. My god. Like the Croods, it's at the other end of the spectrum from Kung Fu Panda. Humans are gaining intelligence here, but dragons ain't speaking yet. I'm not quite sure just how many Dreamworks properties can be encapsulated within this umbrella theory, but there seems to be an alien element as well as seen in All Hail King Julian, and it perhaps seeps over into stories like Home, Monsters vs. Aliens, and Megamind. Oh my god, the government was suppressing Megamind and Metro Man, as I said in my theory. It's too much. Perhaps reinforcements from the fruit pantheon? Perhaps it's irrelevant. Shark Tale proves what we already know, which is that animals are smart underwater too, and I even hear that the new movie Abominable has a character, another redhead, that's out to suppress animal intelligence as well. While I know very little about the Croods, I feel like it deals with a divergence point of sorts where humans started gaining intelligence faster. Again, I assume, but don't even get me started on Mr. Peabody and Sherman, in which a dog basically controls space-time out here shaping history, headass, and the villain is a spiteful middle-aged woman who is genetically similar, psychologically similar, and voiced by the exact same actress as Gladys Sharp. Humans are trying to force evolve themselves as seen by the mutations of Monsters vs. Aliens, but how am I supposed to work with all of this? It is exhausting. I know there's some sort of cohesion to this, but there are so many bizarre coincidences and patterns, and my job is to stitch them together without holes. This is my task, whether the patterns are intended or not. I fill plot holes, if I can. But this video has served its purpose. It's literally the midway point of this dissertation. The threads are here. Now they just have to be strung into the corkboard. As promised, we will use all of this and structure it into a timeline and a cohesive theory, though it will be an extremely lengthy endeavor. I'll at least try. This is the same situation I was in with my penultimate Pixar theory, but that ended up working like a charm. I need more time to debate which of my other Dreamworks theories belong in this playlist, so you might see some more get added shortly. Keep up to date, that's all I'm saying. Before we can do any of that, the purpose of this video is to show you the basis of what I'm going for here, and show you all of the things you need to look for, because now comes that time. Help me in the comments. I need all instances from all Dreamworks properties, cults, smart animals, humans suppressing them, supernatural events, and aliens of all sorts. Any Dreamworks property, all of the films, spin-offs, everything. Help me. I'm shocked I've gotten this far completely on my own, to be honest. This will end up being 25 parts. I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I'm foreseeing 7 hours in total length. This will be so awesome when I finally compile into that mega video, and I can't wait to see what will happen next. I need to think on a more grounded level to recuperate for now, but fill my comment section. Fill it. Fill it. Until then, I'm the Theorizer. You can't win this time, this is where I draw the line far as the eye can see, you can't be free of me. The con haunts your dreams, questions bursting from your seams, but anomaly, I scream, answers fled the world a meme, such wow, much cow, dimensional pimp, wimp, unholy flippant bitch. Guess what, you're my niche, I don't guess, I devise, and your rapping I despise, and just to emphasize, I'll likely roast you till you die. You can't get any better, as your character's a mess. Rock bottom is the high end of what you call success. If you want a truce, talk to me on Twitter, and I wonder, is your happiness as real as the imaginary number? You wish to be the Theorizer, it's your deepest desire, but you have no creativity. You've lost your anonymity, and your soulless life's unceasing longevity will keep you roasted through your 70s, Mort. I theorize it's what provides your shitty attempts at grasping at straws held in place by threads of laws you've broken with all of your flaws. You've used up all your roast ideas, and fool, guess what? This exposure will bring closure to your life. I'm thankful for that much. I can't wait to win with my skills yet again against this perverse, demon-laying mother hen. What can happen to you, Will Murphy's bitch? You only wish to be rich. Here, I'll pitch you the rest of your life. You'll die in the ditch.